Please sit down. Good evening and welcome to this council meeting. I am Councillor David Lindsay, the Mayor. In June 2017, 72 of our residents tragically lost their lives in the fire at Grenfell Tower. I ask every member of the council to pay our deepest and continuing respects in the conventional manner by marking the moment with 72 seconds silence now. Would everyone please stand? Thank you. Please sit down. Agenda item 1. The minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. Please may I sign them? When you want to, Maxine, if you give them to me. Does any member, this is agenda item 2, wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary or any other significant interest in any item being considered at tonight's meeting? Agenda item 3, special announcements. It is with sadness that I must inform members that the following officers have passed away. Lee Evans, who was a senior pay and reward officer in the HR department, passed away on the 20th of March 2023 with 38 years of service. Ishrat Aziz, a social worker for North Complex Adult Team in adult social care, passed away on the 29th of March this year with 15 years service. And Lisa De Jesus, a leasehold alteration officer in housing, passed away on the 1st of April with 25 years of service. Does any member wish to speak? In which case, I now ask the Chief Executive to report apologies for absence or lateness from this meeting.
Thank you. I've received apologies from Councillors Adorian, Folkes, Idris, Marshall and Wheel.
Any apologies for lateness?
I've received no apologies for lateness.
Item 5 is public speaking. I will invite those who have registered in advance to speak to address the Council in turn for no more than 5 minutes each. A member of the leadership team and a member of the principal minority party will then be able to respond for up to 2 minutes each. I will ask any speaker who reaches their 5 minutes to bring their address promptly to a close so as to ensure that all speakers have a fair and equal opportunity to be heard and to receive responses from councillors. And I would now like to ask Andrew Sundell to ask his question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Council. I wish to speak to you about Milo. Milo is autistic. He's 6 years old. He's in year 2. He's the youngest in the class, and he has behaviour problems. He also has obsessions, which is common with autism, the Mayor of London being typical. And Milo needs additional funding. He gets funding, but it's only in the mornings, 1-to-1, and he needs a whole day. And Milo is one of dozens of children in our primary schools in this borough who require 1-to-1, but don't actually get enough funding. As Cordelia, her name isn't Cordelia, I just like the name Cordelia, and she's in year 3 in another school, and she likes standing on a table and shouting, very disruptive. And the other children of the class go home and tell their parents about Cordelia, about Milo, and it doesn't do the school much reputation. It doesn't do it much good. Cordelia's parents, they're older parents, and because they're older parents, they don't want her diagnosed. Without being officially diagnosed, they can't get funding. But there could be funding held here at the town hall by charging for parking permits for EVs. There are currently 2,335 EVs in this borough, and they're owned by wealthy people. The average salary in this borough is £46,000 a year. And if somebody's on, say, £30,000 and they're not privileged like me in community housing, they're skint by the time they pay the rent, the council tax, and everything else that goes with living in this borough. So they're not here for the marketplace. It's the wealthy. Now, the money from parking permits, it's passive money. It's passive money, and it shouldn't be given away. At £100 a car, at the moment, it would be the best part of £250,000. Serious money, out of hand. And it's the wealthy who are benefiting. 82% of the EVs in this borough are leased. And because they're leased, they're 50% tax deductible. Insurance is often linked with the lease, which is 50% tax deductible. The VAT that's charged every month on the lease agreement is 100% tax deductible. And maintenance and repairs is 100% tax deductible. And yet you're giving money to these people. Passive money. People who live in Phillimore Gardens, they know all about passive incomes. They probably have lots of it, and they don't give it away. And you shouldn't be giving it away. It's not equity. Now, the word equity, I've known it all my life, and I always thought it was the name for an actors' union, performing arts. But when it became equity, that a man can wear a frock and go into female changing areas, I thought I'd better look the word up. And I found in the dictionary, equity is fairness. It isn't fair to subsidize the wealthy. It isn't. And you can't say, oh, well, you know, we'll give them this concession of free parking. Before they had the EV, they probably had a Range Rover, a Maserati, and paying £400. So ask them for £100. At the moment, it's best part of £250,000. By September, it will be £250,000. And it could be a fund for these children in the schools. And I'm sure there's many councillors here who have a project they'd like to get off the ground for the sake of £2,000 or £3,000. Well, it could be the fund held here. We'll call it the EV fund. And you can still save face. You can write to these 2,335. That was the 1st of March. It's probably gone up. And as I say, September, it probably will be £250,000 revenue from £100. My smart car's 134. Now, I think that's very good value to park anywhere in the borough. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. And it's out of hand now. It's serious money. It can't be given away. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you so much for your question. I would now like to ask Councillor Kamali to respond.
Andrew, thank you for coming in and for raising those points. I absolutely agree with you that obviously we want to make sure that the funding goes to the right places. Something slightly unique about the money that we raise through parking is that it has to be held in a dedicated parking reserve, we're not able to take that money out to use it for other council services. What we are able to use it for are only really transport-related things, such as sort of some of our placemaking projects around the borough where we've pedestrianised some areas. We've just recently completed Chelsea Green and we'll be starting Bute Street soon. What we've done in Kensington and Chelsea, we did start at £22 for an EV permit. Boroughs such as Hammersmith and Fulham and Westminster actually charge £0 entirely for electric cars. What we did in April this year is we've raised that from 22 to 40 as we realise more and more cars are becoming electric. Whilst we do want to incentivise people to use less polluting forms of vehicles, we do have to pay attention to the fact that obviously as vehicles change, we need to make sure that our parking permit prices reflect sort of fair value. And we will continue to keep those fees under review. The update will be for the following April, but we'll start the work on where we should set that level in the next couple of months, really. But yeah, we're unable to move the money around in the way that you articulated, I'm afraid. But thank you very much for coming.
May I make a suggestion? Change the rules. Change the rules.
I'm afraid it goes, that one sits with the Houses of Parliament rather than the Town Hall. But yeah, I do take the point.
And by the way, EVs sales are now flagging. They're going down the pan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Dent Code, would you like to respond now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. This issue about free parking for EVs for people with a great deal more money than most of us also drives me to distraction. I was actually fined once for parking, I don't have a car anymore, for parking in an EV parking spot, and I just ignored it and nobody came after me because there's no enforcement of these things either. So it does also drive me to distraction. Of course, EVs are not 100% environmentally squeaky clean, as we know, looking at where lithium comes from and all the other heavy metals that go into their batteries. And we really need to think about that. You cannot jump into an electric vehicle with your conscience squeaky clean. So I'm 100% with you on that. I want to pick up on something that Councillor Kamali said, because actually I looked into this issue about the parking reserve, and actually he's incorrect, because it can be used, and I did check this with our finance director, the Road Traffic Act 1984 section, can't remember which. It can be used for environmental improvements, improving air pollution, play parks for public use, and all kinds of things like that. So this doesn't help Milo and Cordelia. But let me tell you something about autistic children in the borough. There is always money in this borough for things that we care about. There is always money for that. And for autistic children of all things whose parents want to keep them in regular schools, like they do in some schools, or they have somewhere they can go if they get distressed, there is always money if they want it. It's just political will. So on both sides, Mr. Sundell, thank you very much for bringing this. The electric vehicles are a bit of a con, as you say. The sales are dropping because I think a lot of people realise they're also ruining the roads because they're incredibly heavy, and they create a lot of 2.5 particulates because of the brakes and so on, because they're very heavy. They're not what people think. So thank you very much for bringing this. And we will continue to bear this in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for your question. And I'd now like to ask Kieran Terry to ask his question.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, councillors. I'm Kieran Terry. I'm a borough resident in Earls Court. Like many of the borough's residents, I welcome the council's alfresco dining policy and wider moves to protect and enhance local shopping areas, such as the recent improvements at Chelsea Green. It's really good to see some of our local high streets and shopping parades thriving again after the pandemic and people coming out again. Earls Court doesn't have any streetscape schemes planned, and the area would massively benefit from additional investment. Would the council support such a scheme in Earls Court, such as on Hogarth Road or a similar street?
Kieran, thank you for that question. Councillor Kamali, could I ask you to provide a response, please?
Thank you, Kieran, for coming in. You may be aware our new council plan actually sets out a commitment to sort of make sure we do a streetscape improvement in every ward. I'd be very keen to do one in Earls Court. As a council, we're obviously not able necessarily to change the businesses that operate, but what we can do is create a beautiful place for them to operate and generally try and improve the area for residents. You mentioned Hogarth Road. I'd be really happy to sort of take that away and see if we can get the wheels of the council turning on that one. Unlike the Labour boroughs that I've referenced earlier, we do actually raise money from EVs, so we will be able to use some of that EV income to fund a streetscape project in Earls Court and in other parts of the borough. So I look forward to perhaps working with you or colleagues on a scheme in Earls Court soon and getting the alfresco revolution down to the streets of Earls Court Road. Brilliant.
Thank you, Councillor Kamali. Councillor Lowry, would you like to provide a response from your side?
Thank you, Mr. Terry, for coming to speak to us. And I mean, you're absolutely right. The so-called alfresco revolution has brought benefits, and over 70% of residents and people who responded to the council's consultation supported the plans for a more permanent alfresco scheme from this year. But it's important to strike a balance between our hospitality industry and supporting them and the livelihoods of immediate residents and neighbours in those areas. I mean, there are some fantastic examples of where alfresco has improved the vibrancy, aesthetic and ambience of certain areas. A couple of examples, Westbourne Grove and Pavilion Road were attractive and definitely make a positive impact. Now, when it comes to Hogarth Road, so as you know, Hogarth Road is a mixed road. You have shops and hospitality on the Earls Court side, and then more residential on the other side. And there exists concern from many residents in residential areas about unruly behaviour, for example, when alcohol is served and in the evenings. And before implementing such a scheme on Hogarth Road, you have to take into account the loss of parking bays, which is subsidised by residents, and the fact that the road is extremely narrow. Now, as we move as a borough to a more permanent solution to alfresco, the council as a whole needs to take into account planning, monitoring and enforcement, waste management, making sure all designs are environmentally sustainable. That means not using heaters, for example, especially in summer months, and ensure that generally it respects the ambience of conservation areas. And finally, while we would support such a scheme if those can be met, the focus of this council on the so-called alfresco revolution should not distract from the cost of living crisis currently being experienced by many residents throughout the borough, and absolve the leadership team's responsibility to support those residents who are suffering.
Thank you, Councillor Lowry. Paprika Scala-Williams has asked me to read out her question. The north of the borough is famously in disproportionate contrast to the rest of the most glamorous part of London. There is hardly any culture provision, however many private, no tax-paying schools. Our neighbourhood is full of creative talent with no prospect of trying their chances in art entrepreneurship. At the same time, second year at the prime spot opposite Latimer Road Station, there are 11 renovated and adapted to be used railway arches that were promised to our community as reparations after the tragedy of Grenfell, and they're still empty. No one, no councillors, no council officers know any answer to the questions when we could try our feet and use this space. There is great social potential in giving chances. The affordable rents, in inverted commas, are not affordable for any of the well-educated and highly skilled craftsmen of our area. Mothers struggling to make ends meet, but desperate to blossom, showing their exceptional skills. Would the council consider a two-year trial period for carefully selected and well-connected to the area art workers to try and build a vibrant educational proposition to attract not only local people, but potentially crowds from outside of the borough too? Could I ask Councillor McVeigh, please, to answer that question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Paprika. Thank you for coming here. Lovely to see you again. And I just want to say thank you for all you do in the area in North Kensington. I think your ceramic hearts are absolutely beautiful and incredibly thought-provoking and very moving, so thank you for that. I have to admit to an expression of interest, I suppose, because I went to art school, and I think creativity is at the hub of so much possible wonderful things that happen in life. And I think North Kensington is a hugely, highly creative area. And The Lockton Street arches, really sadly, are a real blight, actually, and they are TfL arches. And I know that the council has been pushing TfL to really get them up to spec. I mean, they made them all look nice, and then they all started leaking water, didn't they? So I think your question has prompted me to kind of, really re-engage with TfL again, which are sadly slightly tricky to engage with, but we will focus on that because they're right at the heart of the community. So I'll get back to you on that, definitely. And then the other thing about... Yeah. It's a complete waste, and I know other people in the community have talked about this as well, definitely. In terms of other creative things we do, the Portobello Business Centre does have some great courses for entrepreneurship, particularly young creative ones, and they now operate out of Morley College, and Morley College has a kind of market trader course, but also they still have their ceramic studios, which is good. I think a while back I did something myself there, which was great.
I can interfere because first of all, it's quite poorly equipped this particular school.
Oh, okay.
I worked there as
Okay.
my work placement when I was studying, and it didn't change much.
Okay.
Even though it's Morley College. When I studied on the BTEC levels, I went to Westminster because Westminster Art and
Very
Education
good. Okay.
Services had a really nice and lush educational huge workshop, and this one is tiny and really unimpressive.
Okay, sorry, I think
I
we
think
need to carry this conversation
Councillor
on.
McVeigh, I'm going to give
Sorry.
you another 20 seconds because you were interrupted then, but if you can keep it to that,
No,
I think
that's
that's a fair
fine.
amount.
I think there are some opportunities in the area. We probably, and this is something that you brought up, which we probably need to kind of, actually have somewhere where we can curate what we have. Oh, I'm not on my mic, sorry. I'm talking to the resident.
Thank you, Councillor McVeigh. Thank you, Paprika. Councillor Benton, would you like to respond for up to 2 minutes?
Thank you, yes. Thank you, Paprika, for the question. You obviously know a lot more about the area than our lead members do. As I understand the issue with the arches, it is somewhat of a synecdoche, representing a typical, in some ways, emblematic example of the council's ongoing failure to address residents' needs, at least beyond the occasional beautifully crafted press release. At least we know a publicly funded leadership support team buys us something. This space was promised, at least in part, in direct response to the 2017 exposure of this council's callous and abusive neglect of the ordinary people of North Kensington. Since then, it has been caught up in endless red tape, buck passing over its ownership and custody, and the avoidance of any responsibility for its viability, upkeep, and indeed safety. All of this means that, yet again, the people of North Kensington are denied a public good promised them for 5 years and counting, due to the council's disregard for materially fulfilling their promises. I hope that your raising this question leads to the authorities taking responsibility and taking the necessary steps to deliver this space to the community as promised all those years ago. Now, your suggestion of an arts programme is a good one, which I would be very happy to facilitate. As you say, North Ken is an area internationally famous for contributions to the arts. However, with the shrinking of public spaces and assets and the atomization of communities resulting from 40 years of neoliberal policy at all levels of government, the material requirements needed for the genius of our ordinary residents to thrive has been stolen by private capital. A measure such as this would, of course, necessitate the returning and opening up of our community spaces, empowering the countless brilliant and inspiring residents of North Ken, and ensuring the continuing legacy of our legendary borough. Thank you again.
Thank you, Paprika, for your point. And I would now like to invite Michelle Dawes to ask a question. So, Michelle? She's not here. Do you want to, Laverne, do you want to ask if she goes second so that somebody else goes before her now? Okay.
Hi, everyone. So my question is, so why after Grenfell is the RBKC Housing Department still failing vulnerable residents?
Thank you for your very succinct question. Councillor Taylor-Smith, please, would you like to answer?
Thank you. And thank you, Michelle. Very short and poignant question. So, and I'm very sorry to hear about your case. We don't discuss cases in open council, but what I will offer you is to have a meeting with me privately to discuss any specific issues that you have. The issues for us, I mean, failings in terms of our ability to give homes to people like yourself is something that we all should obviously learn from, and it's something that obviously I'll take back and talk to the team. I mean, on a wider issue, in Kensington, Chelsea, we have a major, major housing crisis. And a lot more people, more than ever, are now presenting themselves to the council for homes. And we have now over 2,100 families who have registered wanting to have a new home and are currently in temporary accommodation. And this is exceeding anything that we've ever experienced before in terms of the council. So, but I must stress this is not just a problem of Kensington and Chelsea. This is a national problem and a very acute problem, one in terms of London. And I think it's important to just touch a little bit on what we can do about it. Well, obviously, everything we can do about it. First thing we do is we need more homes. And we have a new homes programme in order to try and do that. But it's still going to be a drop in the bucket. The second thing we need to do is hold developers to account and to try and get the maximum number of social and affordable homes out of developers. And I'll be interested to hear what the Labour Group has to say about that. The second thing is we're looking at our allocation scheme. We've recently published a new allocation scheme giving priority to people on a waiting list so people don't feel that they're stuck in a rut. We're also looking at buying more temporary accommodation as well, which is predominantly out of borough, which is where the council can afford in order to do that. And I think the important thing is to work with residents to work out what the alternatives are to social housing in this borough. And sadly,
Councillor Taylor-Smith, you've had your 2 minutes, so if I can ask you to sit down.
Thank you. Just to finish up saying I'm very sorry, but please let's meet up and I'll discuss it privately with you. Thank you.
Councillor Ali, can I ask you to provide
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And may I also thank Michelle for coming to the council meeting this evening and speaking about the housing issues. Yes, as you know, and most of our residents who are really, indeed on the waiting list, over 3,000 of them, and over 2,000 of them are on the temporary accommodations. We know the importance of housing. But the question will be, if a lead member of housing can say the good words, also the good deeds should follow. And we will definitely need more housing. One example that we've done back in 2020, when the COVID started, we realized the importance of housing, and we came up with healthy homes for RBKC, and to support not just existing homes, not just to build new homes, but also support existing homes. But ultimately, what we need is more housing. And if I were to give you an example of canal side project, or the building that will be coming, almost 4,000 units, at least half, if not 2/3 of it, should be housing, social housing, where we can give not only social housing, but for also our residents who are police officers, workers, anyone who's a key worker. But good words can be said, but we really need an action, not just from this borough, the leadership, the Mayor of London, and the wider government. And I look forward to the leader of the housing for this chamber to really go and visit some of the properties that really need, so that we can actually experience what our residents are going through, rather than you coming here. I look forward to working with the leader and hopefully visiting some of the housing issues and the local. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. And Michelle, thank you for your question. And I would now like to invite Morame Nunes Trejos to ask her question.
Good evening. I need to stand because I'm nervous. I have a loud voice, so I'm now scared I'm going to make everybody deaf. My name is Morame Nunes Trejos. I'm known as Mimi. I live on the Wales End estate. I've lived there for 35 years. And today I'm here as a representative of my community members in south of the borough and other surrounding neighbourhoods. I'm here today representing community members in the south of the borough where essential community provisions have been stripped and residents have been left hanging out to dry. After Grenfell, there was a promise that the council leaders would be listening and taking care of our residents, at the very least consulting with us. That promise has never materialized for us in the south. Please note that the following statement that I'm going to make has been co-produced by a concerned residents group with wide input from local residents who could not be here today, but as you can see, some of them are here with their children. It started with the Wells End Neighbourhood Advice Centre as an essential community resource being closed. Now we find that the under fives and the food bank are now going to be closed. WINAC, the Wells End Neighbourhood Advice Centre, has been replaced with inadequate provision that does not meet the needs of the local residents, and we want to know why. One, based on recent advice sessions held at Chelsea Theatre, which is no longer a community resource, the demand for dedicated service has been demonstrated. Councillor McVeigh, decision-making rationale has been and is misleading. WINAC has never failed in the service delivery to the community, so your statement is misleading. An example of this is when during the pandemic they did not stop delivering their service from their office, when other better funded organisations closed and went online, such as the CAB, and their model has stayed as they were at the pandemic, with very little one-to-one support. This must be addressed. WINAC has never failed the community, evidenced by the service deliverables and outcomes. Based on feedback from recent experiences, the current provision has already failed the community and they've only been delivering for a couple of weeks. So far, feedback from about 20 individuals has been the following. People have walked out rather than be shamed by being exposed at Chelsea Theatre's cafe when being given advice, if they're lucky enough to be given the advice. An older lady came to us and said that she did not feel heard, and at one point she felt like the advisor was bored. She was humiliated, went home and spent the night crying. This is an older person. Another individual, was told to go to the bank, get information and come back. When he returned, the advisor wasn't there. And so the issue was left unresolved. A disabled person with significant mobility issues and cannot reach nucleus in Earls Court has had to go back and forwards, each time having to retell their story and the issue still not resolved. Another one has been waiting 2 weeks for a call back, and they haven't received the call yet. A council officer stated that the provision would be good enough. The community want to know, what does the council think is good enough? It is short-sighted decision-making that the council leadership is currently taking. It will come at great cost to the local economy, the community, and social cohesion. To the community, the points I have made just reinforce the contempt, disregard, and dismissive manner in which RBKC leadership has traditionally treated the community, especially the most vulnerable in our community. Where are your promises? We can no longer trust you, is how they feel. It shows Grenfell lessons have not been learned. Political decisions are being made clearly in the interest of the wealthy residents in the borough, and a direct cause of an ever-widening gap between the haves and the not-haves.
Maura, mate, you're going to be much longer.
I have some questions, but if that's all I'm going to get, then that's all I'm going to get.
You've had your chance. If you want to ask your questions now. If you want to ask your questions, please do so, and then they will be answered.
Yeah, that's the questions. The community demands to know the following. As the council owns the units, what is the plan for the units that WINAG and the under-5 creche currently use? In the financial crisis, what is the benefit of closing the food bank that people have greatly come to use? Having recently been told that we need to be poorer, is the plan to starve and strip all our essential community resources? Is that the plan? What are the plans for current empty units on the Wells End estate that are being denied to current providers of community programs based at Wells End? And finally, when are we going to be consulted? Currently, service providers based at north of the borough cannot deliver at the south of the borough because they don't have a space and they can't afford to use Chelsea Theatre. Because although Chelsea Theatre was once a community resource, they now simply tolerate us.
Thank you so much,
We want
Maura May.
the council to reconsider the decisions that leave behind
You
our community. We want to be consulted and we want to be heard today.
Councillor McVeigh, can I ask you to respond, please?
Yes, thank you very much for your question. It's much more in depth than what I was expecting, so I would really like to come and meet with you and to talk about this properly. Regarding WENAC, I mean, it is an independent organisation and we have funded it for many years. And we're still funding it actually until the end of June. And so they are providing it. And at the same time, we're also funding... Well, we are writing cheques for them out the door. So if they're not have got their doors open...
Maura May, if you want to hear...
Let's meet.
Can I just say...
Also, can I carry on?
Yes, but if Maura May wants to hear the answer, you've got to let Councillor McVeigh speak.
Do you know how long we've been trying to get this to be heard? And we've been told no?
David, Mr. Mayor, please. I agree. We need to have this conversation. WENAC, we had heard, and we have been monitoring for many, many years, and that they weren't actually doing all they should be doing for the community. So we've actually put... Okay, well, I'm happy to hear more about that. And we have put in place provision with Citizens Advice Bureau and Nucleus to provide specialised housing, benefits and debt information, health and employment information, education. I have heard your statements.
So are you saying that they're lies?
No, definitely not.
It's failing.
No. So it has been in place for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
And so we need to then find out what they're not doing right. And so this is going to be a very important part of the conversation. Yeah, so great. So we will have this conversation and we will then make sure, we'll go back to CAB and Nucleus and say why they're not doing what they should be doing. Because, yeah. So we will then take that on board. But we are still funding WENAC till the end of June. And no, we are funding them to carry on with their existing clients. Well, no. Okay. So we will take that up and we'll have a meeting with you about that because obviously there's a miscommunication. And regarding Chelsea Theatre, that is still a community place there. No?
Councillor McVeigh.
Okay. Okay. All right. I will come down.
Can I suggest...
Okay, thank you very much for that. I will come down and I'll speak to the Chelsea Theatre because they are supposed to be a community organisation. So, yeah. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McVeigh. Can I suggest that if you want to talk more, this is not the best place, but Councillor McVeigh has agreed to go down. Can I ask Councillor Simmons to respond for the Labour Party?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to Mimi and to all the residents for taking the time to come here and raise this important issue that is disadvantaging the most vulnerable residents in our borough. I know that your petition is now at almost 1,000 signatures, which shows the strength of feeling about this issue. The closure of the World's End Neighbourhood Advice Centre is regrettable and very troubling, as is the Council's refusal to engage with the community over this previously. I did think there was a statutory duty to engage and consult, but I'm very encouraged by Sof McVeigh's response today. I hope the lead member will now be willing to enter dialogue with you going forward, and we, the Labour Group, are also very keen to meet with you to find out how we can also support you going forward. The alleged failings given by the Council in the key decision as the grounds for removing funding were in no way related to the service delivery, which, as you've said, is exemplary and has been for over 40 years. It may interest the lead member to know that as a ward councillor in Nottingdale, WENAC was the only reliable, effective source of advice and support available to my constituents. This is where North Kent Law Centre was referring me for my constituents in Nottingdale. Its closure is negatively impacting residents across the borough. Residents' statutory right to legal and expert advice is meaningless if they are denied access or barriers are placed by the council to exercising this right. The alternative services that you've mentioned are no substitute for what WENAC provides, and I urge the lead member to listen to residents and look again at this, and indeed I thank you for saying so. I'm dismayed to now learn that the creche and the food bank have also had their funding withdrawn, and I'm really struggling to see the rationale on that. If the council wishes to have the building back, it must not be at the expense of residents. Services must not be removed on a pretext. It must be possible to find alternative accommodation for the absolutely vital services housed there, and I hope the lead member will be willing to do this, and that both these, well, all three of these services can be reinstated as a matter of urgency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Thank you, Morame. And I am now going to read out Noel Cross's question. The Borough Warden Service is quite ineffectual compared to its outsourced predecessor. Does the Council think that taxpayers should continue with it in its current form? And I'd now like to ask Councillor Will if she'd like to provide a response.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Mr Cross, in absentia, for your question. So over the last year, our wardens have had 9,059 recorded interactions with the public. That's 175 a week. This included 2,521 on begging, 592 on busking, 569 on cycling on pavements. They've issued 45 fixed penalty notices, but these, of course, should always be a last resort. They have also carried out 50 joint patrols with the police, including weapons sweeps. We are in the process of increasing the number of wardens we have to 22, so that we will actually have more than one in every ward, as set out in our manifesto. The warden per ward model will provide additional officers to tackle the ASB issues that residents tell us are one of their prime concerns. It will also enable each ward to have a point of contact, an officer who can make links with RA, ward panels, business forums and voluntary sector organisations. I do believe there is a misunderstanding with this question. This, our warden service, is a brand new service. We have never, ever outsourced it. We did, and perhaps this is where the confusion arises, have a pilot with NSL in Earls Court, which happened just before COVID. But we found that it didn't really provide us with the level of engagement and resident-focused service we wanted, nor was it flexible. It was, as you would expect with NSL, who do parking tickets, much more focused on issuing tickets. Our in-house warden service allows us to take a partnership approach, enforcing where appropriate, but also being flexible to respond to issues and needs appropriately, particularly to those most at risk on our streets. Thank you.
Councillor Will, thank you. I'd now like to ask if Councillor Ali would like to provide a response.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Labour Group of Councillors do welcome the presence of the wardens here in the local community for the sake of our safety of our community. And I think initially what the council is trying to do, or what the council has been providing, and the increase of the number of wardens, I think were welcomed. However, we have to make it clear that they are not replacement for police officers. The community safety definitely need more police officers here in Kensington and Chelsea so that everyone in the borough can feel safe in their homes and when they are about, as well as to making sure that the value provided by the wardens is value for money. The service provided by the values is service for money, and I would like to know more about it if the local people have been employed, so that the residents can feel not only that the strangers coming down to say we're providing support, but the people are employed and trained are locally, so that the local jobs will be for the local people, so that the safety can be kept locally rather than using outsourced measures. And I wish to welcome the lead member's comment, as well as hopefully meeting about the community safety, because we take community safety very seriously, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, well done. Councillor Ali, thank you. And in absentia, thank you to Noel Cross. Agenda item 6, do members have any petitions to present? I understand that Councillor El Naghi and Councillor Simmons have petitions. Councillor El Naghi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The petition, help us keep Clarendon Road safe. In recent months, there has been a sharp increase in the number of crimes committed on Clarendon Road. Both residents and shop owners have been victims of multiple burglaries. In the last month alone, a van, motorbikes, and bicycles have been stolen from our street, and both our shops has been broken into. Please sign our petition to ask RBKC Council to install CCTV to protect our street and find those responsible. We need at least 50% of the residents' signature in order for our request to be considered. Thank you, and please spread the word.
Councillor El Naghi, thank you. Councillor Simmons, I believe you also have a petition you wish to present.
I do, yes, thank you. This petition is on behalf of WNAG, the World End Neighbourhood Advice Group. Stop the closure of World's End Neighbourhood Advice Centre. For 40 years, this service has been accessible to all residents in the area, providing the community with high quality and timely advice, information and support. This service is a trusted community resource with knowledge, expertise and committed staff who understand the community they serve. The alternative, Citizens Advice Bureau, has changed the way their service is delivered, creating barriers for the most vulnerable in our community, and is no longer what it once was. We must act now to save a community resource that provides a level playing field to community members when dealing with issues and navigating the ever-changing local and national systems and procedures, often out of reach to the most vulnerable in our community. Thank you.
Councillor. Do you want to bring it up at some stage? Okay, fine. Does anybody else have any petitions? In which case, can we now move on to item 7, the statement by the leader and the response by the Leader of the Minority Party. I now invite Councillor Campbell as the Leader of the Council to address the meeting for up to 5 minutes.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, tonight I thought I would update colleagues on the encouraging progress we're already making on the ambitions set out in our Council plan. Launched less than 30 days ago, we set out how we want to work with residents, business, councillors across the Chamber and partners across this borough and across London to make Kensington and Chelsea greener, safer and fairer. Speaking to our Chief Executive in the last few weeks, it's clear that our staff have taken on the challenge of becoming the best council, a mission given to us by the bereaved and survivors of Grenfell. We have been looking at what we can do across the board and seeing how we can provide support, assistance and services with increasing levels of care and competence. Staff and residents have been working together to co-design a new set of service standards that will ensure residents receive the best possible service when they call, email, or access council services in person. Gradually, I hope people who use our services will soon notice the difference. We will listen and be empathetic, update residents with progress on their inquiry every step of the way, and take responsibility, not pass the buck. Mr. Mayor, I make it my goal to deliver on plans, not just write them, and to do so with energy, speed, and consistency. As promised, we're already investing in public services, and work is underway on key projects set out in our plan. We're doing exactly what we said we'd do on housing, finishing what we started. I have been with Kim to a number of sites across the council, including Kensal Road and Hewer Street, and it is so exciting to see projects moving from the paper that they were planned on to the bricks they're being built with. We are making streets cleaner and safer, readying Jem and Johnny's street cleaning war chest and Emma's ASB busting initiative, which will kick off our drive to create and improve amazing spaces right across the borough. The work we've done to tackle the cost of living and support people most in need is a clear indication of our commitment to fairness. The debate and motion later this evening references the incredible effort officers in the voluntary sector have put in to help people through what has been a very difficult winter for so many people. We know residents have been affected by the rising cost of living. The figures tell us that there's been an increase in households that are struggling and a 10% increase in households in fuel poverty. Whilst the Council cannot tackle all the financial pressures people face, we continue to provide practical support for people in partnership with the government and with the voluntary sector. We've put in place a 100% council tax rebate for the poorest households, set aside £8 million in support, and put together an online cost of living hub. Mr. Mayor, we've made many changes and much progress across so many areas, making this borough greener, safer and fairer. We've opened the new Grenfell Nursery, doubled down on our alfresco policies, made it easier for people to make climate-friendly changes to their homes, launched new school streets, made our housing allocation schemes fairer, found a home for charities via our social investment strategy, and launched a new smart city pilot in North Kensington to save money on energy bills. Yet, we are just getting started. Mr. Mayor, finally, as we get closer to the Coronation Bank holiday weekend, I want to say thank you for the way residents have engaged with events and opportunities to celebrate, and for the way councillors in this chamber have brought people together and made sure that people who want to be involved can be. A huge thank you to the officers who've helped us make things happen and who will no doubt be working over a series of bank holidays and indeed on the coronation itself. We've got a big screen coming in Holland Park and multiple road closures for parties and gatherings. It promises to be a unique month in the borough, and I hope that everybody is looking forward to spending time with friends and family. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell, thank you for that. I now invite Councillor Dentcode to respond for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do wonder if we live in parallel universes sometimes, my goodness. Before I start, I want to say a word about the coronation. There's a rumour flying about that I have banned Labour group councillors from attending anything coronation related. It is utter nonsense. Whether or not we share the belief systems of others, some of course do, we're always ready to pay respects at festivals, holy days and other momentous events. Being respectful to others' beliefs is a mark of human decency that many of us are more than pleased to demonstrate publicly. So let's put that aside. Mr. Mayor, there are many things that make me angry, and one of them is where money is misspent, especially funds this council is spending unwisely or frivolously. Why, Mr. Mayor, why are we buying yet more paintings for Leighton House? The painting in question in my studio by Alma Chardima is being saved for the nation from export and being purchased for display in our blinged out Leighton House that we've just improved at a cost of £10 million, and I think it may be more than that. I think I had to do the calculation. We spent more on Leighton House recently than we did on Grenfell Tower. It matters not whether it's our own money. It matters not whether it's our own money or whether we have a team of officers applying to countless arts lottery funds.
Yes, what is the point, Councillor Taylor-Smith?
Standing Order 21, point of clarification, to suggest that we've spent less than £10 million on Grenfell is completely outrageous and untrue. Thank you.
That's not what I said, actually, Mr. Mayor, but I said that I think we spent more on Leighton House than 10 million, which was allotted to it. And I will be finding that out. Thank you. So,
can you please
whether or not we
let
have...
Councillor Dencode speak.
Thank you. A team.
Let Councillor
I'm just
Dencode
coming
speak.
to the Art Lottery Fund. Whether or not we have a team of people applying to Arts Lottery Funds, why is this a priority? It doesn't matter if it's our money or other money. If we're focusing on this, I asked the relevant director a week ago, this is what I found out, that there's a team of people working on applying to funds. Why are we doing this? Our priorities are twisted. We've been hearing from residents today how much they're struggling, and we're focusing on this. The council has then been hustling Leighton House fans for donations towards buying this painting. The full price of this lovely painting, which is a consumptive lady sniffing flowers whose clothes are falling off, is £890,000. Why is the council being investigated for corporate manslaughter, still pursuing the dream of the art patron with taxpayers' money, even if it's a bit and a team of officers? The council needs to focus. The refurbishment of Lancaster West is getting very messy indeed. Other refurbishment projects, as we know, are in chaos. Clearly, we're hoping for Museum of the Year for Leighton House, another visit from a rapturous King Charles, and possibly a peerage for somebody sometime soon, I don't know. Meanwhile, councillors in Notting Dale Ward and others in North Ken dealing daily with the continued chaos after 6 long years of mismanagement of the so-called Grenfell recovery in all its manifestations. Notting Dale councillors kept out of the news round relating to the settlement of civic cases, but find out instead from, God's help us, the Daily Mail. It's very clearly a game of news management which we are kept out of. It's a power game. And a council under investigation for corporate manslaughter, and yes, I said it twice now, we should be working with, not against, councillors on the coalface dealing with the consequences of council failure every day. There is no statutory duty to act as carefree art patrons, to put together our own or other people's money to buy paintings of semi-naked women to save them for the nation. It is not our job. Councillors' casework is growing. Labour councillors have no admin support, unlike the leader who has a team of, 8 or 9 people, and are expected on very modest allowances, many of us, to take on the emotional and time-consuming burden of those failed by the council. Saving paintings of consumptive women smelling flowers is quite simply barbarous in the face of near destitution of some of our residents. Most councillors are here to save their communities. Some, sadly, may be here for the benefits they hope to reap. Mr. Mayor, our AGMs are coming. What will happen in the annual game of musical chairs? Will you serve another term, Mr. Mayor? Will the councillor leader be supplanted by one of your keen, ambitious young people? Will the deputy leader be moved aside by one of your keen, thrusting young bucks? Will I be here? Or will one of our fine, gifted, eager, thrusting councillors, of whom I am so proud, take my place? It's just very exciting. So much to look forward to. Happy coronation to all, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dencode, and thank you for being exactly to time. In accordance with standing orders, I rule that the order of business shall be as printed in the agenda. Agenda item 9, I now invite Councillor Campbell to propose the reception of the new municipal timetable and Councillor Taylor-Smith to second it.
I'd like to move it, Mr. Mayor.
And I beg to second, Mr. Mayor.
And I now invite Councillor Campbell to speak to the report.
I don't have anything to add, Mr. Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak to it? The adoption of the new municipal timetable? In that case, does the Council agree to adopt the municipal timetable for June 2023? The recommendation is agreed. Agenda item 10, matters referred to by the leadership team. There are no matters for the Council's consideration. But at agenda item 11, I now invite Councillor Addenbrooke to propose the reception of the Joint Health and Wellbeing Report and Councillor Campbell to second.
I beg to move, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to second, Mr. Mayor.
And I now invite Councillor Addenbrooke to speak to the report.
I have nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Does any other member wish to speak? Councillor Thaxter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am not a member, but I'd like to highlight the strategy. I think it's a fantastic strategy to actually tackle inequality, health inequality in our borough. But what I do not understand and I do not agree with is the members on the board. They do not represent a diverse population. And Mr. Mayor, I would advise the board to actually put a Labour councillor on the board to represent the inequality in our borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? In which case, does the council agree with the recommendation set out in paragraphs 2.1 and 2.2 on page 31 of the agenda pack? In which case, the recommendations are agreed. Agenda item 12, matters referred to the council by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee or the Select Committees. There are none. Agenda item 13, questions asked of lead members. I've been notified of 7 questions to lead members. May I advise members that after consultation with the party groups, I've agreed to make an exception and allow a 3rd question to 1 lead member. And I now invite Councillor North to ask a question to Councillor Thalasites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With our first value being putting communities first, may I please ask the lead member for Finance and Customer Delivery for an update on our warm hubs policy for this past winter. Can I ask what lessons we've learned from this in the context of the Council's wider cost of living work? And from my own volunteer experience and visiting a number of the designated warm hubs around the borough, many residents and community centre managers have told me that they very much valued the commitment from their council. Also that it brought peace of mind had we had a very bad winter this year.
Councillor Thalasites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor North. I want to start by thanking you, Councillor North, for coming on visits to some of the warm spaces with me over the past few months, and also for all of the work you do volunteering in the borough. And likewise, I know there are lots of people across the chamber that have done a lot with the third sector to help with the rising cost of living. During the winter, we had something like 24 or 25 warm spaces spread out all over the borough. And as I say, we went to the Dalgano Trust together. We went to the Response Centre with Councillor North and Councillor Ajurian, the most active Earls Court councillor I can think of at this moment in time, and also to Chelsea Theatre with Councillor North. So it's been a useful exercise. We've seen residents at all of these places who have made the most of the offer. I think in terms of the lessons that we have learned, it's been about redoubling our efforts to tackle the rising cost of living where we can and work practically with partners across the business and the third sector. And I'll be talking more about the cost of living towards the end of the night as we get to the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thalasites. But Councillor North, do you have a supplementary question?
No, but just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say thank you to our community members, especially the ones that we spoke to, and the residents across the borough that give their time for volunteering groups. And they kindly spent a lot of time giving us some very constructive feedback.
Councillor North, what is your question?
My question is just to say, well, it's not a question, it's just a statement to say thank you to the volunteers.
Thank you. I now invite Councillor Verboven to ask a question to Councillor Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The publication of the Baroness Casey review gives a lot of food for thought. The review highlights that the current Borough Command Unit structure is not working. What discussions has the lead member for Safety, Culture and Leisure had with the new Borough Commander about a return to community policing in light of the Casey report, and also the fact that this BCU has seen a decrease of 52% of its PCSOs between 2015 and 2022, the largest decrease amongst Borough Command Units in London?
Thank you, Councillor Verboven, for highlighting this important issue. I have, of course, read the Casey report and, in fact, discussed it with our new Borough Commander, Louise Puddifoot. With regard to the structure of the BCU, that is not in the gift of the Borough Commander or this Council, but MOPAC and the Mayor Sadiq Khan. Turning to the question about community policing, I can assure colleagues that the new Commander is very focused on the importance of neighbourhoods as set out in both the Casey review but also the Met's own recent transformation plan. And I'm really encouraged that she has already started to make changes. Some of examples of these changes are each borough now has its own dedicated superintendent, whereas before we only had one shared across 3 boroughs. The BCU also now has 3 DCIs in public protection. Previously, there were only 2. The Borough Commander is clear that neighbourhoods need to have a greater voice in where additional assets like the TSG are used. She strongly believes that they should respond to local needs rather than just be allocated. With this in mind, neighbourhoods are now co-chairing the Tasking Coordination Group. Finally, she is a public order specialist, so she is well aware of the specific problems that abstractions cause in this borough, and she is prepared to challenge about competing needs. I believe that the new Borough Commander understands what needs to be done to address neighbourhood policing locally and is already making those changes. We will, of course, continue to work with the police and hold them to account. And finally, as I always say, almost every time the Liberal Democrat group asks a crime-related question, this Conservative Council are not responsible for either crime or the police. That resides with the London Mayor. Thank you.
Would Councillor Verboven like to ask a follow-up question?
Yes, absolutely. And we're fully aware that this council is not responsible for policing, but you are the lead member for safety, so there are other measures that can be taken into account than just police officers. And actually, when it comes to that, actually we just heard today that the Metropolitan Police is the only police force in the UK that actually didn't achieve its recruitment targets, which is actually quite appalling to hear. In Earls Court, we suffer from that because we often end up with barely or no police cover for valid reasons. Some stuff that could be abstractions, that could be holiday, sickness and other reasons, but our residents do feel that, and I'm sure that that's happening in other places too. A recent meeting with residents from both Earls Court and Redcliffe residents show that the intense frustration among residents, that there is an intense frustration among residents, and the Redcliffe Ward councillors can confirm that frustration. Residents have had enough.
What is your question?
So, these steps are first steps, but what other steps are you considering from RBKC's point of view to ensure that residents feel safe?
Thank you for that excellent follow-up question when we finally got to it. What I can tell you is that we, and I'm going to be speaking on this again, is that we know that ASB is the top priority of residents. That is why, and we've already alluded to this, we are spending extra money on ASB, why we have a warden service, why we've put in extra CCTV. I don't want to repeat things that I'm going to say later, but thank you for flagging something that we are very concerned about, and we are doing all that we can to tackle, given that, as I previously said, we are not in charge of the police or abstractions or police numbers, but I do regularly talk to the police and we challenge them on these issues and we try and push them whenever we will, as much as possible, to make sure that they do what they're supposed to be doing. Thank you.
There are another 5 questions. Can I ask that those people who asked questions and ask a supplementary, I'll leave it at that. I now ask Councillor Ali to ask a question to Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may not need a supplementary if a lead member answers my first question, hopefully. As you're well aware of, we have councillor sessions, as well as I have been doing walkabout to make sure that my residents who may not come to the councillor surgery can get the support they need. And I have been meeting residents in Oakworth Road, Mithwell Road, as well as Hill Farm Road. And the residents have raised so many questions about what they call council's major work failures, as well as making sure like service charges, which are incorrect, have been charged by the residents. And I would like to know if the lead member can support the residents that I have mentioned now, and hopefully have the time to meet with them and to join me in my councillor walkabout in Delgado Ward, which will be welcoming him, and to really hear from the residents that the desperate need that they are in this situation when they get thousands of pounds of invoice on the TMO logo last year, 6 years after inadequate casework has been done. This is really crucial importance for my residents and the Delgado residents. Please do respond to this and hopefully have the time to meet with my residents in Delgado Ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali, or shall I refer to you now as one of the young thrusting members of the Labour Party as well, as referred to. So, can I say I was slightly confused, Kasim, because the question that I got was the one that, to respond to was the one that you emailed on the 21st regarding the 6-year capital programme. So I didn't have the full response. I will give you an off-the-cuff response to say that I was in Oakworth Road myself a week ago on a follow-up talking to residents. The work that was done in Oakworth was the last of the commission work from the TMO, and it is shocking. It is shocking. I've met with the contractor who's done the work, Waits, and I think the standard of the work is absolutely appalling, and we'll all remember, you know, the travesty of all the scaffolding that was up for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I think the residents have a very good case, and I think in response to your question, I am most willing to go and meet with the residents. I need to do a little bit, do a bit of digging on the other roads that you've referred to, which I can come back from. So I think I'm happy to set that up. But I agree. I think the work was done very poorly.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor?
Thank you very much. No supplementary. Looking forward to meeting you. Thank you.
Very good. I now call Councillor Issy to invite a question to Councillor Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you across the country. And my question is not supplementary also. I would like to ask the lead member too. Power Square, a small residential area that affected directly by the noise, nuisance, and antisocial behavior from the ball court users, the basketball users of Power Square Garden, which caused restlessness, stress, and sleeplessness to the residents in their homes. The complaints of Power Square residents of the past year or so were not listened or addressed, or to resolve the problems they raised for many months. They were really neglected. Every person has a basic right to live in their homes in peace and tranquility. Does the lead member of the Safety, Environment and Leisure plans to take an action to resolve these ongoing problems? Also, the consultations, most of the consultations were not the people who live in Power Square. I have seen, you know, and I am aware, my ward, and the consultations were mainly people who are not affected the noise, the nuisance, and antisocial behavior faced by these people. And the other alarming issue, the same people complaining for the noise and nuisance of that basketball, on their windows were installed dog toilets. So they have to suffer the noise and nuisance, and they have to suffer the shit of the dog. And this is why only these people, they have this problem and not install it to another area. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Will, would you like to respond now?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Issy, for your question. I know that you have been really trying your best to support your residents, and I also know it can be very difficult when there isn't always consensus among them. And that is the nub of the problem in Power Square. Not that we are not listening. On the contrary, we have already spent nearly 5 years and hours of officer and resident time consulting on Power Square improvements. The reality is that it has not always been easy to reach consensus, and I have been very clear that we need to be democratic and listen to all relevant parties and make decisions that benefit all the residents. I should stress this is a public square, it's a public garden. We cannot limit it only to people who live in Power Square. We would be open, quite rightly, to challenge if we did that. However, I am glad to say that we are making progress and have now completed the playground, and we are working on some of the remaining items. It is important to note that there has been basketball in Power Square for over 20 years, and it is a very important facility for young people, particularly in an area where serious youth violence is an issue. We do understand it creates noise, and I wanted to list some of the specific actions that officers are undertaking to try and find suitable measures to mitigate those noise concerns, which will be fit for purpose. These include things like investigating noise-reducing net and backboard, exploring sound-absorbing surfaces for the ball court, researching methods and potential removal of the basketball hoops in line with opening and closing times of the park. We've been undertaking a sound assessment for the last month of the potential surfacing solutions. We've been working with the head coach of the local basketball club in Westside, talking to them about noise-reducing backboards and nets on our current setup. And we've also been working with that Westside coach to engage with young people about using the square to respect neighbours and minimise noise while using Power Square. And finally, following a consultation, we have just implemented a revised opening and closing times from 8 till 8 p.m, so it will be closing earlier. I also wanted to say that the Parks Police separately have continued to respond when on shift to help deal with noise and also calls regarding trespass in the park after hours. And the Community Safety team have recently set up a mobile CCTV camera to help monitor issues of ASB. So, in summary, I believe we are listening and working really hard with residents to try and find a solution that works for everyone.
Councillor Issy, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Will. My question is, are you willing to visit with me to Power Square Garden so you have seen the issue and the problem, and then we have to have a consensus to resolve this issue. 8 to 8, it is not reasonable, because people who are working at home, they cannot hear when they have a Zoom meeting or team meeting. So, I suggested, if not remove the basketball court, maybe the hour is to be reduced, 9 to 6 p.m. But in any way, I would like to request you to visit with me the area, and then we have to see the reality going on there. Thank you.
Councillor, I have been many times to Power Square, but of course I'd be delighted to go with you. Just to clarify again, because I think this is a really critical point. The reduced hours that have just been introduced were done after a consultation. I can share the details, you've probably seen them. But this is so important to say this. It is a public park, like all our others. We can't, just because it is in a square, we cannot limit the consultation to only people who live in the square. It is not a private square garden. It is a public, I repeat, public park.
Thank you, Councillor Will. Thank you, Councillor Issy. I now invite Councillor Lowry to ask a question to Councillor Campbell.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it says Councillor Taylor-Smith in the notes, so it's Councillor, fine. Councillor Campbell.
I have to say, it says to Councillor Campbell, and then it says you're going to ask a question to Councillor Taylor-Smith, so I'm not quite sure to whom it's meant to be put.
I'm happy to direct it to either, but I'll ask Councillor Campbell, given that's who was called. Councillor Campbell. In Hazelwood Tower, the council operates, and this doesn't apply to Adair, but to Hazelwood, the council operates a system of recharging residents for heating using an averaging system based on the number of rooms, regardless of whether the resident has their heating on or consumes the heating. Now, the council, having after a lot of pressure on them by myself and residents, knowing that this system is unfair, is looking to abolish it for the year 2024-2025 onwards. However, this has already left many residents laden with debt as they accumulate invoices for heating which they are not using and cannot afford. Therefore, can I ask the lead member to please abolish this system of recharging residents immediately, not wait till next year, issue a moratorium on payments, and until we move to a fair system that doesn't charge residents for a service they aren't even consuming.
Thank you, Councillor Lowry. I think actually my deputy who's responsible for housing is probably best set to answer this, but I will attempt to answer you. So as you know, Hazelwood Tower and its sister tower, Adair, are undergoing significant refurbishment at the moment. More insulation, air source heat pumps to make them greener. Therefore, in time, both towers, the residents of both towers will see a drop in their bills, and they will see, they will have the ability to save money. So currently, the majority of our district heating systems rely on a pooled approach where all residents, all tenants are charged the same on the basis of the average use and the property use. So it's a legacy scheme that we have at the moment. When we upgrade systems, we install individual meters to ensure that people then only pay for what they use. But as you can appreciate, it's quite a long process and it'll take time to roll it out across the borough. So in Hazelwood Tower, we installed specific meters for each property last year. However, the differential between those using the most and those using the least was significant, meaning that some residents faced a significant sudden increase in their bills. So what we did was we agreed that with residents to allow them time to change their habits before introducing individual charging. So the individual metering charging will come into place next year. So you asked for a hiatus in payments. In other words, providing heating and hot water to residents of Hazelwood Tower for free. But that would be incredibly unfair to those residents who do have to pay for their heating and their hot water on individual boilers. And not only that, but it would leave the HRA with about a £10 million loss, putting the financial stability of the HRA at huge risk. So I'm sure you'd agree this is not the right approach. It would benefit residents in one estate, but it wouldn't benefit residents across the board. In fact, it would be to their detriment. So I would like to just finally say that during the refurbishment, because of the impact of the works, residents of Hazelwood have benefited from a housing rebate. And I believe that another payment of this rebate is due shortly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Lowry, do you have a supplementary?
I'm glad the lead member mentioned the rebate because actually last time I checked, it was actually missing a month's payment. Now, if the council's already acknowledged that the system is unfair and they're changing it, your answer doesn't affect those who have debt as a result of heating they cannot afford to consume. It's unfair for people who cannot afford to consume heating and have deliberately turned off their heating for certain months to be charged for that. I think it's actually outrageous. So my supplementary question, also in relation to the major works, is, given the residents of both Adair and Hazelwood Tower have been victim to one of the most incompetently run projects, major works projects, as acknowledged by officers who waste a significant amount of their precious time chasing and getting the contractors who they appointed in order. For example, works of balconies were delayed for many, many months, and residents last month were exposed to toxic fumes without prior warning. Do the lead members agree with me that they require compensation?
No? I might defer to the lead member for housing on this specific question.
I think that makes sense, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, and sorry for the confusion, Mr. Mayor. I was told that I could only answer 2 questions, hence I understand you shifted to Elizabeth. But can I first of all just thank Elizabeth for her excellent response? So, Adair and Hazelwood, as I say, they were spending £8 million on both buildings. We're using a contractor called Lawtech, and I would agree that we have had issues with the contractor Lawtech. You know, that's something we've got to take away in terms of issuing future contracts. I can't say anything more than that. So there has been problems and works. But overall, when I walked past the building last week, when you look up and you see the building and you walk into the reception and the lobby and the new concierge and the new television set and the terracotta that's up on the walls, the new balconies, the double glazing, everything else, that there will, at the end of it, although it has been a trial for a lot of residents, it has taken longer than we've expected. But the result is going to end up with magnificent homes and with residents that are going to have cheaper bills. And so consequently, I don't believe that it is absolutely right, and again the same point goes as reiterated, that we should expect other hard-working residents to pay for that. And so in short answer to your answer, no, we won't be making compensation payments. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor-Smith. Can I now invite Councillor Hammond to ask a question to Councillor Will, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The table question is this. Following on from the valuable feedback received from residents at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee's Conference on Antisocial Behaviour, to ask the lead member for Culture, Leisure and Community Safety to update the Council on her plans for addressing this major area of concern.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond, for this important question. And thank you also for organising such a useful and informative conference last month. As we all know, tackling ASB is a really important issue for our residents. In fact, reducing crime and antisocial behaviour was the most common issue raised by residents during extensive borough-wide consultations held in summer of 2021. Making our borough greener, safer and fairer are the key priorities in our new council plan, and we are making progress. We are expanding our warden service to provide a warden per ward. This will provide a visible, uniform presence on the streets with local knowledge able to tackle problems as they arise. We know this is what residents want. We continue to expand our CCTV coverage, most notably using NSIL so that residents can request CCTV where they want cameras. We're also looking as part of our CCTV review at how we can better integrate this service across the borough. We have piloted action months, concentrating our community safety provision in specific problem areas to crack down hard on crime and ASB. But we are not complacent, and we know we must do more to keep our residents safe and tackle crime and antisocial behaviour. This is why at the last full council, Councillor Thalasites announced that they had found additional money so that we could have a ward blitz on ASB in each ward each month, beginning, we hope, this summer and running for 12 months. We know from our Isles Court pilot that this focused approach works in driving down crime. It will see extra shifts from wardens, police and waste enforcement officers. Our commitment to tackle ASB is unwavering, and with our partners we will continue to innovate our approach to make our neighbourhoods greener, safer and fairer and be the best for our residents. Thank you, and there endeth my hat trick.
Councillor Hammond, maybe not quite Councillor Will, depending on whether Councillor Hammond has a supplementary. If you'd like a supplementary, Councillor Hammond, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course I do. Mr. Mayor, I'm very grateful to my friend, the lead member, for her excellent answer. And on the day the government announced its achievement of its manifesto commitment to recruit 20,000 more police officers, and that we now have 3,500 more police officers than we had when the government took office in 2010, will she welcome this fact, and will she continue to lobby the police to have more visible policing on the streets where they provide reassurance to residents and deterrence to crime and antisocial behaviour? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. I'll be brief. We absolutely welcome this announcement. I know every single resident in this borough would like to see more police on the streets. I the number of police in the borough, which, by the way, changes all the time for all sorts of reasons, is a very much an ongoing conversation that we have when we talk to them, and we push them on it all the time because we know this is really important to our residents. Thank you again, and that really does end my hat trick. Thank you.
Can I now ask Councillor Schmetterling to ask a question to Councillor Taylor-Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to submit an oral question to the lead member for Housing and Social Investment and Deputy Leader. I have to insert here, I think he's got the hardest portfolio of the lot. As follows. To provide an update on progress with the New Homes programme, which I gather is well advanced. Perhaps he could provide, where available, details on the first tranche, like location, planned estimated first move-in date, number of homes, and typical rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schmetterling, for your question. Following the Grenfell tragedy, I made a commitment to deliver an ambitious house building programme to build 600 homes with a minimum of 50% at social rent. And this came at a time when this council, rather shamefully, hadn't built new homes for a long time. And hadn't done that for decades. And the number of available sites that we had to do so was also extremely limited. So it was a commitment that we gave to involve residents. It was a commitment to rent, not to sell their units. And it was a commitment to have mixed tenure. And that's not to have any poor doors, which this council believes to be totally wrong. So I'm very pleased to announce that the first two schemes within phase one of this commitment are very near to completion. We'll see them completing next month. Together, Hewer Street and Kensal will provide 58 homes, 29 of which will at social rent and 18 will be at key worker rent. What they will also include is that the Kensal Road will also include a very large medical centre, £5,000, and this will be 5,000 square feet, and this will again hope to contribute to the poor outcomes as far as Goldball, which I know we've heard about many times in this chamber. Furthermore, on the second part of that, Ackland Road, if you walk down opposite the Almanar, you'll see now is sprinting up, and that's going to give us a further 32 homes. So in total, these phase one homes will give us 90 brand new homes, and 75% of those are going to be affordable. So, Mr. Mayor, this is an achievement, a great achievement for this council, and a testament to culture change and the vision of us wanting to be the best council, which is greener, safer and fairer. And so, Mr. Mayor, this is only the first of 3 phases. Phase 2, we're already on site at Silchester and at Balby, and that will be a further 100 new homes. And on phase 3 today, I've had a meeting with our new partner on Lotts Road, and Lotts Road, that's going to be 65 socially rented care homes and a further 28 social rents, and a lot of community and commercial space as well. And again, re-emphasise that 50%, minimum of 50% of these will be at social rent. So 600 new homes is a significant achievement, but it shouldn't be the end of the story, because we need more. We referred further on, we've got 2,100 people in temporary accommodation. And so it's very important that we work hard to get our allocations that we need from major developments, such as the one that's being proposed at both Erscott and Kensal. And can I say, the feeling of joy that I got from Councillor Ali referring to Kensal and the opportunity to deliver a large number of social homes outweighed the disappointment that I had from Councillor Lari a couple of meetings ago, saying that we were only going to get 600. But anyway, we take these joys as where we can in the chamber. So, Mr. Mayor, can I just say that a fantastic new homes programme will help us deliver homes. Pressing developers is going to help us deliver homes. And Mr. Mayor, I reaffirm my commitment that I will fight tooth and nail as far as helping the residents address the long list that are currently in temporary accommodation. Thank you.
Councillor Schmetterling, would you like to have a supplementary now? In which case, thank you, Councillor Schmetterling. Thank you, Councillor Taylor-Smith. And we now turn to agenda item 14, matters of local concern. Does any member wish to raise a matter under Standing Order 11 and speak for up to 2 minutes? I've got Councillor Bennett, Councillor Hargreaves, Councillor Whedon-Sands and Councillor Simmons, which I'm going to take in that order. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I just want to draw the Chamber's attention to a matter of good local news you'll be delighted to hear. I wonder how many members here are familiar with the Beatrix Potter Globe. It's an open-air amphitheatre in our very borough. Yes, I know, I'm sure a few of you are. An open-air amphitheatre in our borough, designed by the same architects that designed the Barbican. And the fact that probably most of you aren't aware speaks predominantly to the embarrassment of cultural riches that we have in this borough, but also to the fact that it's not in the best state it could be, and unfortunately it's currently not safe for theatre performances to take place. Now, I'm delighted that myself and my other Redcliffe councillors are able to help out. There's a local plan funded by our City Living Local Life budget to bring the amphitheatre back to its former glory, make it safe for theatre performances and provide it with disabled access. And this work has already been commissioned, and the first performances will take place by the local amateur dramatic society, the Earls Courtiers, this very summer. From 28th of June to 1st of July, you can go and see them perform West Side Story. So get your tickets while they're still available. It's in Redcliffe, in Bousfield School, on the Old Brompton Road, and there'll be, after West Side Story, I'm sure there'll be many more performances that members can go and visit. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bennett. Can you tell me where the Beatrix Potter
the Beatrix Potter Globe is in the grounds of Bousfield School in Redcliffe, just off the Old Brompton Road.
Thank you. Councillor Wade, what do you want to do?
City Living Local Life from Earls Court Ward Councillors.
Thank you for that. Can I now invite Councillor Hargreaves to speak? Councillor Hargreaves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, Mr. Mayor, I would like to recognise the work being done by residents and the council in the replanting and landscaping of Chelsea Embankment Gardens. This has been led by a local steering group formed to help to deliver this project. And this has been a highly successful project with the council, both officers and councillors, local residents and the Chelsea Physic Garden coming together to plan and manage the project which is now underway along Chelsea Embankment. We have seen the real pride that residents have shown in their local environment and how they want to be part of ensuring that it remains a good place to live. For many people, this is the first sight of entry that they see when they come across Albert Bridge, and it's important that we present a right image for our borough. And this has been a real example of co-design, with residents taking the lead in envisioning the original vision for the work, working together to help to choose the designers and the landscape gardeners who will actually deliver the work. And we've had great support from the Chelsea Physic Garden in helping us to assess and manage the right plants and the right shrubs to put into this area. Also, a huge thanks to our Parks and Leisure team, with Sarah Brian leading on this. And thanks also to our absent lead member at the moment, Councillor Emma Will, for her support on this. Chelsea Riverside is one of the most densely populated areas in the borough, and our green spaces are vital for our residents and for the whole look and feel of the ward. Over the past few years, with the help of ENSIL and the council, we've invested in Westfield Park, Cremorne Gardens, Roper's Gardens, and now Chelsea Embankment Gardens. And residents appreciate this and are looking forward to working with the council on the new public open space on Notts Road, once Thames Tideway have vacated that and finished the work with the in the super sewer there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hargreaves. Councillor Whedon-Sands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to briefly put on the record, on behalf of my fellow Queensgate Ward councillors and myself, our gratitude to the council officers, to the team particularly working on the City Living Local Life Fund, and to Councillor McVeigh and the leadership team who helped us put together the Gloucester Road Coronation Street Party happening on the Sunday the 7th of May to mark the coronation of His Majesty the King. All residents are welcome, free to enter event for all the community, including any Republican sympathising local residents who live in Labour councillors who might live nearby. It will be a wonderful opportunity, I hope, marking the beginning of our vision to make the Gloucester Road a destination rather than a drive-through, and putting it at the heart, once again, of our community in Queensgate. An opportunity for all the residents who do live in Queensgate to come and spend time here. It's not a question, it's a standing order 11. It doesn't need to be a question. I want the gratitude, and I look forward to welcoming any other fellow councillors to come and celebrate with us. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to all those who've helped make it happen.
Thank you, Councillor Whedon-Sands. Councillor Simmons, would you like to speak now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, on the other hand, wish to raise as an urgent matter of serious local concern the increases to rent and service charge for council tenants and leaseholders, which are having a devastating impact upon residents across the borough, but especially in North Kensington. These increases are not realistic, affordable or sustainable in the midst of a cost of living crisis, when residents are reporting serious issues and dissatisfaction with services and repairs, in an area with significant deprivation and a community already traumatised by Grenfell and with associated vulnerabilities. These increases were not agreed by residents at the TCC, as we are told, and when they were proposed, concerns were raised by members of both main parties. The universal credit argument is a red herring which is offensive to residents, does not address the problem and does not speak to the massive increase in the service charges. As residents have rightly said to Councillor Taylor-Smith at a recent meeting, you are not considering the mental health impacts of this upon residents, which will be severe. As Professor Lewis Appleby reports, financial stress and hardship is a significant risk factor. Councillors are receiving calls from residents in tears over this. The Grenfell Health and Wellbeing Service and CNWL Single Point of Access are also being inundated with calls from residents in extreme distress about this. As residents have also told Councillor Taylor-Smith, this council does not seem able to grasp or comprehend the impacts of Grenfell and the impact of what residents have been through at the hands of RBKC before, during and since the disaster. It is wrong for this council to expect residents, including its poorest and most vulnerable, to pay for this crisis, caused at least in part by years of neglect. The state of the HRA is not of their making, and they should not be punished for it, and the same applies to the national climate. There is also a very significant practical and moral argument in the case of Lancaster West in particular, who have borne the brunt and the consequences of council failings in the most terrible way and are facing very specific issues. This is not just any other estate, and this council needs to recognise that, as I believe the leader has done in her speech at the last meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons.
I will now brace myself for the customary disparagement and ridicule that the majority party find acceptable in responding to the councillors of North Kensington
Simmons, I'm asking
and
you
the
to sit down.
Grenfell
You've had your 2
community
minutes.
in this chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Simmons. Members will see that there are 4 motions printed in the agenda. Motion 1 is on the subject of cost of living. I call on Councillor Thalasites formally to move the motion standing in his name. Sorry, somebody. Councillor Hargreaves formally to move the motion standing in his name, and Councillor Lane formally to second the motion.
Back to second.
I now invite Councillor Hargreaves to speak for up to 5 minutes.
Mr Mayor, thank you very much indeed. And in debating this motion this evening, it does give us all an opportunity to recognise the real hardship that many of our residents have been facing over the past year, as Britain, like many other countries in Europe and indeed the USA, have faced high inflation and abnormally high increase in the cost of many household essentials, particularly in food and fuel. Britain has not been alone in this, and we know the main causes have largely been beyond our control. Increasing gas prices from Russia has had a dramatic effect on the gas supply in Europe. And in addition to an increase in energy costs, global food prices began rising after the pandemic. As the economy started to recover, and as we know, the impact of this, combined with the Ukraine invasion, has been severe, with low-income households suffering the most. So, Mr. Mayor, as the motion says, while the Council cannot completely mitigate the financial pressures people are facing, we welcome the Council's package of practical support for people produced in partnership with government and the voluntary sector. As we would expect from this Conservative-led Council, the leadership team acted very quickly to help our residents affected by these extraordinary price rises. Much of the support has come on the back of the central government's Household Support Fund, now worth over £2 billion in England. The last tranche of £480 million extra money given to the Council was announced recently, of which RBKC received £2.4 million. And this will enable us to provide further help to those most in need with essential food and energy costs through to the end of March 2024. In addition to the money from central government, the Council has used some of our resources to give additional help to our residents. And the Council's very helpful cost of living support hub on the website can help residents see what help is available and how they can apply for this. The support from the Council during the past 3 months has been practical and wide-ranging. And we've heard already tonight of some of these initiatives. Opening warm weather spaces in community centres and council buildings. Supporting young people eligible for free school meals. Using local support payment to help residents afford food, and discretionary housing payments for eligible residents struggling with their rent payments, to name but a few. And Mr. Mayor, at this point, I would like to particularly note the enormous help and support from our faith groups and community groups right across the borough, working together with the Council to support our residents. The warm winter spaces have been a classic example of working together, with spaces being made available to residents from churches, mosques, libraries and community centres, from the north and the centre and the south of the borough. In February, the Council announced additional cost of living support for primary schools with a £250,000 uplift. This has allowed schools to implement their own cost-saving initiatives, including free hot meals, breakfast clubs and discounted school uniforms. And recognising the continuing hardship our residents are experiencing, the Council outlined other support in the budget for the new financial year, which we debated at our last Council meeting. These include a £100 tax rebate for properties in Band A to D and a freeze on council tax for the coming year. This Conservative-led Council is clear on where our priorities lie and how we can best support our residents. This, Mr. Mayor, is in complete contrast to the Labour Mayor of London, who, rather than helping the residents of London during this difficult time, made it worse by increasing his share of the council tax by just under 10%. This, Mr. Mayor, is in complete contrast to his leader, Sir Keir Starmer, who said that he would freeze council tax for 1 year. So are Labour in favour of increasing council tax a la Sadiq Khan, or are they in favour of freezing it a la Sir Keir Starmer? And this, Mr. Mayor, is from a party claiming to be ready for government. So, Mr. Mayor, whilst I recognise the work done by this compassionate Conservative Council, the cost of living challenges are not over. And we will call upon this Council to continue to monitor. It is, and we will call upon this Council, as they have done already, to continue to monitor the impact of our residents and to continue to give appropriate support, particularly for our most vulnerable residents. Mr. Mayor, I commend this motion to the Chamber and I urge all members to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Hargreaves, thank you. Councillor Lane, do you wish to speak at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo the points made so eloquently by my colleague, Councillor Hargreaves. when the Council announced the Cost of Living Support Fund, we were clear that support would be available throughout the winter and beyond. And it's that word beyond that I want to focus on. Being clear that support should and will be available for as long as residents of our borough need it. We're continuing to proactively update the Cost of Living Hub, continuing to collaborate and support our amazing voluntary organisations in this borough through the Voluntary Sector Support Fund, and we're continuing to support young people eligible for free school meals. Our response will continue to be evidence-driven and based upon people's need, and we'll always bear in mind that we will help whoever needs it, no matter what walk they come from in life, because people who are struggling to make ends meet often find themselves in those circumstances through no fault of their own, and really find it hard to understand what options are available to them. The truth is, at least in my opinion, is that if you've actually never been poor before, it's really difficult to actually understand what it's like. It's a constant stress. It's like a sort of balloon in the back of your mind that is inflated when the boiler breaks, or when events that are usually joyful, like Christmas, come round. Raised by an amazing single mother, I know that back in the past, times were very tough for our family, and it was difficult to get through them. I remember going through shopping receipts with my mum and looking at items like orange juice and just not realising how expensive they were, and saying, let's just drink water, we don't need that. I think it's one of the reasons why we have to remember that most people, even if they need help, won't always actively go out and seek it or say that they do, because they just think that they should get on with things and it's their responsibility to shoulder the burden. But that's not true. It's our responsibility as society to help those people in need. It makes it all the more important to be clear to people that times are tough at the moment. It's normal to need help, and at this council, help will always be available to those who need it. And I think it is one of the issues where there is a genuine opportunity to work with our colleagues across the aisle or across the semicircle as it is, because I hope or think that we do all agree on the aims here. That's to help those who, often through no fault of their own, find themselves struggling because times are tough, even if we disagree on how to meet that aim, which often we do. Therefore, though society at large can sometimes forget about those people who are struggling, this council won't, and will continue to support them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Members will see that an amendment has been submitted. I now call upon Councillor Ahmed to move the amendment and Councillor El Nagi to second it.
Yes, let's see.
I propose the motion.
I beg to second, Mr. Mayor.
I now invite Councillor Ahmed to speak for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. I firstly want to thank all the officers for the additional work already being done to support residents, including processing the council tax rebates promptly and collating the information for the support hubs. I mean, of course, we welcome the council's package of support. However, we recognise that there's much more to do, both locally and nationally, and that the support that's being provided does not yet match the scale of the crisis facing many of our residents. We're currently living through the worst attack on living standards this country has experienced since the 1950s, happening alongside soaring inequality. The inflation figures show an increase of 19% for food and drink and an increase of almost 25% for housing, energy and water. And after 12 years of the devastation wrought by Conservative government austerity cuts and economic mismanagement by the government, many people simply do not have the resilience to manage this. The Citizens Advice Bureau queries relating to utility bill debts are up 110% since last April. Already our food banks are running empty, with demands increasing almost threefold in the last few months. And a quarter of all households experiencing food insecurity has doubled at the end of last year. You mentioned single-parent households as well. the number of single-parent households in severe food insecurity has doubled in the last year alone. So we have residents in Notting Dale who are actually fearing eviction at the moment because of the rises in the service charge, which has incorporated absolutely staggering rises in gas and electricity, as we heard from Councillor Simmons. And these are rises far greater than what can be explained by these increased costs that have been referred to. And our residents know that these one-off payments, which too often get quickly absorbed into debt repayments, won't do anything to build long-term financial resilience. They also see the total futility of a £100 tax rebate given with one hand, while several hundred are taken by the other in the form of these increasing rents and service charge. Rent increased by the maximum that it can be this year. And the tax rebate is a measure those on the lowest incomes were already in receipt of, and therefore saw no added value whatsoever. So those who are struggling the most actually experienced very little added value from this measure, which is the opposite of the kind of targeted intervention that's there to benefit those who need it most. So this council can and must do more. You know, we hear again and again telling its residents that it aspires to be the best. But in reality, what it's best at is fostering the highest levels of deprivation in London, with Golborne actually being named the most deprived ward in London, according to the indices of deprivation data that were released by the London Assembly last month. And our ward in Notting Dale in at number 9. So we call on the council to do a number of things. We need to provide urgent funding for the struggling food banks, not closures, as we heard from residents earlier. To commit to an urgent review of these unacceptable, unaffordable service charge increases, including but not limited to the immediate community affected by the fire. To freeze the social care precept and the reversal of the 2% increase that was announced this year. And we call on council leadership, because you've recognised that the approach has to be both national and local. And there is a role to lobby friends in government. And we need to join other local authorities to lobby the government to restore the universal credit supplement of £20 introduced during the pandemic but cancelled by the government. It's actually just as crucial now. Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed, thank you. Councillor El Nagi, do you wish to speak at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No.
You don't. In that case, I will now open the motion up to debate. The councillors who have indicated they wish to speak, Councillor Taylor-Smith, Councillor McVeigh, Councillor Wade, Councillor Bakhtiar, Councillor Ali. Does anybody else? Again, can I call upon Councillor Taylor-Smith to speak now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's actually opportune to speak to this motion, particularly as one's not able to give a response to the matter of local concern raised by Councillor Simmons at the meeting, which we were both at. So let's just talk about the Lancaster West estate. The Lancaster West estate will always be a special place, given the experience of the residents are there. It's special. We're undertaking a very large refurbishment of that space. We're spending 120 million. We're providing the first district, carbon zero district network on the outdoor estates, and the benefit of that will be seen. But while we're on that journey, the residents don't see that benefit. They see the disruption that's happening to them while this work is going on. Now, I attended the meeting Councillor Simmons meted to, and I really do recommend Councillor Simmons send some time to talk to our finance team about the function of the HRA, because it was very clear at that meeting and from today that we need to give you some education on how the HRA works. So the point I really would like to make is that in terms of the costs, I completely agree with what Councillor Ahmed is recommending, that we should be doing an urgent review, and following that meeting we are. As far as the costs, if we look at a one-bedroom home, First of all, the increase in rent is going up by 7%. Every London council is putting up their rent by 7%. We're not alone. And that is against a background of inflation of hitting 9%. So we're recovering less. But all councils are doing that. We have to do it. The suggestion that somehow universal credit isn't a factor is not true. Universal credit is a factor to people on low income, where they get some benefit as far as that is concerned, subject to not having extra bedrooms. So it is a factor. If you look at a one-bedroom flat, if you take out the gas and utility costs, the increase on a one-bedroom flat on Lancaster West Estate is £48 a year. That's less than £1 a week. Okay, that is what the increase that's been put through. The big factor is the gas and the electricity. And if you look at a one-bedroom flat, we've seen costs go from £300 to £1,100. That is an increase that everybody, as far as those that aren't on district heat systems, have experienced over the last year in their pockets. The district heat system, because we have a contract that's renewed annually, that impact comes now. And what we're seeing from our own gas costs is that our gas costs are going from 3 million to 8.5 million. You might like to puff your cheeks out and dismiss that, but the fact of the matter is that if we give £1 in the pocket of somebody who lives on Lancaster West Estate, we'll be taking the £1 out of the pocket from the resident in your ward that lives in Silchester, because we have to have a balanced account in HRA. And it's not a question of largesse giving it to one and take it. All money, as we've said earlier, has to be paid for by residents. That's how the HRA works. Okay? What we will do is we will do as our utmost. Following that meeting, we are going to have a supplementary meeting. We took away issues about what we can do to relieve some of this increase. And I believe that I can come back and I can give some good news on that. I think the issues that were raised at that meeting about people not paying for services they weren't getting, very fair. That's something else we can come back on. And we put in place hardship funds as far as those residents are concerned, and the residents of all of our boroughs. And let me stress that district heat network is an issue for World's End as well, and we've heard from Mimi today on that. These are still the same issues on that. So I think really what I'm saying is that as a commitment, this council, the cost of living increase to our most vulnerable customers is something we take very seriously, and it's something we will do to address. But it will be done within the workings of the HRA. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor-Smith, thank you. Councillor Wade, would you like to speak?
So I was waiting for the red light. I hope we're not going to have a Paul Scully moment when we ask Tory how much a pint of milk is going to cost. I think actually the thing is, the rest of the borough, there is something more than just Lancaster West here. We've got other areas of deprivation. So the cost of living has, in fact, affected very many people, some of whom have never engaged with the council or benefits or anything else. And I think Lloyd knows very well the people who come to St. Luke's. The demographic has changed. People who turn up to food banks are substantially different from the people who turned up 2 years ago when we started it. So I think it's a different thing. It is rent, it is service charge, it is the cost of living. It's people who are going into supermarkets and actually seeing whether it's biscuits, they've gone up by 50p, or how they're going to feed their children. So there is need. And it can be seen increasingly in food banks and in advice centres. But I have two concerns, and this is where the council can help. It's about information sharing, and it's the organisations that are designated to give the grants. So communication is an art. That art identifies the audience and finds ways and means of getting their message. Now, relying on social media is fatal. It actually means a person has to have a smartphone, a computer, and that doesn't actually touch some of the people who come to our solution sessions. Many of them don't speak English, or they're what I'd call genteel poverty. They just don't get it. So actually, I think you need to go back to your communications department, say, go back to the drawing board, Stop wasting money on your social media because Twitter next door ain't working. So I think the other thing that happened is that if we're going to be engaging with people, and sending them to our third sector, voluntary agencies, actually the transparency of actually getting the grants. They go to places, they think they're going to get a grant to help them with their electricity bills or their legal aid or whatever, and they discover either they can't get legal advice or they can't get the utility bills or they can't get the grants. So please don't rely on the websites. People can't use them. This new demographic coming forward can't navigate it. So go back, consider these two factors. Is there transparency in the agencies you're supplying the money to fulfill your obligations, and also how are you getting your information out? Thank you.
Councillor Wade, thank you. Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I begin, in support of this timely amendment to a timely motion, I would like to just, for the record, to remind everyone what I said earlier in support of what Councillor Lowry mentioned on the building new homes, and especially the Eden project, where Goulburn councillors have been campaigning for building more new homes for the local residents. And hopefully Councillor Kim Taylor-Smith will take that on board in support of what Councillor Lowry and his colleagues have been doing. Mr. Mayor, also this month, April, is an important month for those of us who celebrate faith. It has been a really month where fasting in the holy month of Ramadan after 30 days has ended, and people celebrated. Hundreds, in fact millions of people around the world, and hundreds of Delgado residents, in fact thousands in Kensington and Chelsea, have been celebrating the month of Eid, so the holy month of Ramadan and celebration of Eid. So happy Eid to them all, happy Eid Mubarak. And I'm sure it's also been Easter, and you have been to the church and celebrating Easter, as well as Passover for for the Jewish community in our borough, and Basilica for the Gurdwara that we have for the Sikh community. Mr. Mayor, the celebration has been cut short because of the cost of living, and many people could not afford to buy the necessary gift for their children, for their loved ones, simply because they have to choose whether they want to heat their homes or eat or spend it on celebrations. And that is something we really need to think about it as a council when we're supporting local residents here in Kensington and Chelsea. I would like to mention specifically what has been told about the food banks. We said earlier in the council that we will be supporting, or the lead members, the leadership will be supporting the council and making sure we could be the best borough in the country and the best borough in the whole, hopefully, Western Europe. However, closing down the food banks, that says otherwise. And I think it needs to be going back to the drawing board, and I'm sure the lead member will have taken note of what has been said before, and it's time to support residents who are struggling and really support them urgently, rather than saying good words and saying good policies. Again, the policy of supporting residents also includes just monitoring the support, the changing needs of our residents, Mr. Mayor. The need of our residents, whom of them I have met in my own ward, Delgado ward, which I hope the lead member will meet with them, when they bought their homes as leaseholders, the condition that they were in at the time and their lifestyle have changed due to illness, due to other reasons, and now they're in need of support. What can we say about those residents who really in need of support? And this motion, this amendment really recommends to change the ways we can support our residents. And finally, Mr. Mayor, to really commit to review the struggling service costs, service charges that have been talked about for our residents. And really now is a time to support. We would not expect to go through another Brexit. We hope not to go through another war, and the Russian and the Ukraine will come to an end, and ultimately we will not see a pandemic. So if we cannot support them now, what more disasters we need to see our residents to go through and face for the council to offer that support? It's timely amendment to support, and I hope the Labour group as well as the Conservatives will support this timely motion and amendment and offer the real support, not just good words and that is where we stand. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Well done. Well done.
Before I ask Councillor Thalassides as the lead member to respond, are there any other councillors who would like to do so? In which case, Councillor Thalassides, may I ask you to speak now?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's been a useful debate, and as the lead member, I've taken account of all of what people have said. If I run through on some of my reflections that I've heard already tonight, I noticed that Councillor Ahmed welcomed the package of support that's already been given in her first statement, but it's a shame that she voted against it in the budget meeting last month. Councillor Wade spoke out deprivation across the borough, which I think is right, but social media not working. I know she's a keen exponent of Eventbrite and other social media platforms. I want to say happy Eid Mubarak to Councillor Ali, who is, again, a fantastic speaker and one of the most ambitious, I think, on the Labour side of the council. The amendment itself, if I turn to that very briefly, is, I believe, illegal in that it asks us to reverse decisions taken at a budget meeting in full council last month. And curiously, it replaces facts in the first paragraph with political invective. That would be very unlike the opposition. I think Councillor Hargreaves spoke extremely well. He asked whether the approach of this Labour group is more like Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, I should say, or the London Mayor Sadiq Khan. I think, in fact, it's much more like Jeremy Corbyn. And perhaps, just like the man himself, we will see an independent run in Kensington too. There was a reference to a 9.7% hike of the mayoral precept, which, as we've said many times in this chamber before, was the wrong approach. But I, like Councillor Hargreaves, want to welcome the package that was put together in the budget last month, the freezing council tax, the rebate, and also the contribution of the third sector, including faith groups, which I know Councillor Hargreaves is passionate about. I thought Councillor Lane spoke very movingly about his own personal testimony, and I want to thank him for that. And also about some of the practical support that we're giving, like the Primary School Hardship Fund, and also Councillor Taylor-Smith on our side, who spoke about the HRA, who does an amazing job on housing. I think this council has taken a compassionate approach to the cost of living over the past year. We heard a bit about how the Household Support Fund will augment our work from national government, and we're in the process of rolling out the fourth tranche of it, of £2.4 million. We will continue to monitor need across the borough and make sure that we're doing as much as we possibly can to help those who need it.
Councillor Thalassides, thank you. I now invite Councillor Ahmed to respond to the debate for up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say it's an honour to be likened to Jeremy Corbyn. Just put that out there. But yeah, I mean, that in the context of the hardship that we've been hearing about, the motion proposed is one of self-congratulation for actually doing the required minimum speaks to just how out of touch this council can be with the more struggling residents in the north of the borough, and this widening gulf that we are inevitably going to see in already the most unequal borough in the country is a disaster for health inequalities and for mental well-being. And I just want to touch on the issue of the service charges again. Yes, it's correct that other councils have increased rent by 7%, but other councils we haven't seen this kind of increase in terms of charges related to gas and electricity, which is what much of the service charge cost is about. Residents in Lancaster West tell us that they are experiencing increases much higher than what can be explained by just the rising cost of gas and electricity. We're seeing 126% increases in the cost of electricity and 218% rises in the cost for gas. It's just completely unacceptable. Meanwhile, boroughs like Suffolk, for example, are seeing increases along the lines of 14%. So there is, for heating, I mean, and so there is an enormous amount more that we need to be doing. And in addition to this, the government have already spoken about introducing a cap in August on energy costs. But what residents need is support now in cost reduction, and that these cost reductions are calculated and refunded now. So at the very least, what we need from the council leadership is assurance that residents will be getting this refund and it will be coming back to them as a rebate. If not now, then in August, when this comes into effect. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. I now invite Councillor Hargreaves, as the proposer of the original motion, to respond to the debate for up to 5 minutes.
Mr Mayor, thank you very much. Now, it will be very quick because I think there's been some very good speeches tonight, and I thank all the councillors who contributed. And I think it does show that we all recognise the real hardships that our residents are facing. As councillors, we come across this time and time again in our casework. But I really don't see what this amendment is adding to the motion. In fact, it's taking away, isn't it? If you look, I can't understand why you've crossed out there are also warm winter spaces for the local people across the borough. A hugely important part of what's been going on across the borough over the last winter. I know from the Chelsea Theatre that residents have been coming there every day to sit, to work, to talk, to get coffee, and it's been a huge help for them. So why you've crossed it out, I simply don't know. The other point is, if you want us to talk about freezing social precept and reverse the 2% increase in announced this year, can I suggest, first of all, you talk to the Labour Mayor of London about his increases before attacking our increases. So I urge the Council to reject this amendment and to vote for the motion as it stands on the Council agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I now put the amendment, I stress the amendment to the vote. Would all those for the motion please show? For the amendment. For the amendment, I would suggest, I'll go back to the beginning. I now put the amendment, it's a Labour amendment, take the hint, to the vote. Would those for the motion please show? Would those against the amendment please show? Are there any abstentions? I declare the amendment defeated. I now put the original motion to the vote. Would those for the motion please show? Would those against the motion please show? Are there any abstentions? I declare the motion carried. And I now hand over to the Deputy Mayor.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Councillor Ali. I would like to wish Councillor Ali, El Nagi, Ahmed, Isi, and Noor, and Councillor Idris, Jazak Allah Kahir. Motion 2 is on the subject of improving home care in North Kensington. I call on Councillor Dendcote formally to move the motion, standing in her name, and Councillor Thaxter to second.
I beg to move, Madam Mayor.
I beg to second, Madam Mayor.
I now invite Councillor Dendcote to speak for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So let's talk about My Home Care and the very curious funding of this care service by American private equity. My Home Care was, there's a bit of history here, if we have this correctly, and it's very complicated, owned until 2014 by American Sovereign Capital. It was then bought by Graphite Capital, another US equity investor. In 2015, My Home Care was sued by employees for paying below minimum wage when accounting for time travelling between appointments. So money's going to America, employees not getting it. And there's a bit of a picture here. In 2015, My Home Care in Dorset was put into special measures for a litany of failures. It was then owned by Mighty under the leadership of a Tory peer. There were 3 councils at the time who extracted themselves from the service contract of My Home Care. in December 2020, it was announced that yet another private equity firm, American Summit Partners, swooped and bought it up, and then a global alternative investment firm that invests in growth equity. So it's getting bigger and bigger. In September 2021, it changed ownership once again for yet another American private equity firm. Meanwhile, as Councillor Thaxter and I have been hearing from local friends and our neighbours, the service provided by My Home Care has been deteriorating. And subsequently, as we know, a Care Quality Commission report rated the service as requiring improvement. Madam Mayor, this rating isn't just a call to be better managed or to work harder. Care workers, who are gods and goddesses as far as I'm concerned, are entrusted with the personal care of our most vulnerable residents. And yet the report found that people were not always safe. There were late and missed care visits. People were exposed to harm. Medicines weren't always managed safely. There was poor timekeeping and inconsistent staff. Sometimes they didn't turn up at all and didn't tell them they weren't coming. Somebody was found on the floor after a fall, and this wasn't recorded. They hadn't been trained to empty catheters, but they had to do it because there was no one else to do it. And so on and so forth it went. And some people who were forgetful were at risk of forgetting to take their medicine. And one person was found to have had no medicine whatever for 2 days. People recorded as being unable to contact the office about missed visits, and there were 8,000 late visits in 2022 over a 5-month period. Meanwhile, there are severe staff shortages in the service, unsurprisingly, and staff tell us that they're often asked to complete tasks for which they've not had training, as we've heard. Their pay is London Living Wage, same as a shelf stacker in Sainsbury, but this only covers the time, as we know, that they are at their visit, not travel time, and they spend a lot of time running around. Management is poor at best, but often abrasive. Given the conditions they work in and the poor pay, care workers who stay in the service are often driven entirely by altruistic reasons. They're often devoted to those they care for, and yet they often feel unappreciated by their employers. They did, of course, work through the worst of the pandemic, often with unsuitable or no PPE, at huge risk to themselves and to their clients. Towards the end of 2021, they were told they'd get a bonus. When Christmas came, they didn't get the bonus. They were told they'd have to work for another 3 months, not take time off work, and then they would get it. An absolute disgrace. Madam Mayor, the system stinks. Those we rely upon to care for our most vulnerable neighbours are being abused by this system, which extracts money into US equity investors. They are expendable collateral in an international poker game. The Council's amendment, which we will not be supporting, will simply juggle a disastrous situation. We need a full review of funding too, not just suppliers. Profit should go into improving the service, not into American equity funds. This whole process must stop. I ask the Council to review how other councils run home care services, including, for example, Hackney Cooperative Care, where profits are reinvested in training and upgrading staff pay and conditions, and they have an excellent staff retention. Let's put our most vulnerable residents before profit, now and always. Thank you.
Councillor Thaxter, do you wish to speak to this point?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Denkochi covered it basically, but I will talk about my experience in the last couple of months regarding this care home issue. In fact, thinking about it made my belly turn, actually, and I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about some solutions. I suggest that we speak to each of our residents one by one to a consultation, because this system is not working for our residents, and I'm the one that has to pick up the pieces. I'm the one that has to pick up the pieces. Do you understand? So I suggest we do a thorough consultation with our service users, access service processes, checkpoints, inputs, the outputs. What are we doing wrong? How can we improve our local residents' lives? Because clearly it's not working. I've heard so many failings, and I've seen it with my 2 eyes. And I'm not exaggerating, because the opposition party might think that we exaggerate. I'm telling you the truth, Madam Mayor. And I think we should go back to the drawing board and think, because these residents, they need us. They need our help. They're vulnerable and they've paid their dues. And some of these care is not, it's very expensive. It's like an arm and a leg. Some of them cannot afford it. So I think we should go back to the drawing board, think carefully, and look after our local residents, or vulnerable residents who we're supposed to look after. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thaxter. Members will see that an amendment has been submitted. I now call upon Councillor Siren to move the amendment and Councillor Knight to second, please.
I beg to move, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Ooh. I beg to second. Thank you.
I now invite Councillor Siren to speak for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and I apologise for my coughing and my voice. Firstly, I wanted to provide some context to this motion and the provider and the report that it mentions. My Home Care is a commission service. This is a contract that the council has with a care provider to provide care in our residents' homes. My Home Care is our main patch provider in the north of the borough, and we have another 2 providers operating across 3 patches in the south of the borough, and we make use of spot purchase provision when capacity is stretched. Now, of course we are concerned when such a service goes from being good to requiring improvement. And of course we are concerned by the care that our 106 residents were receiving in the months prior to this service being inspected. But what we can't do, Madam Deputy Mayor, is immediately rip everything up and start again. The care market is fragile, good caregivers are hard to come by, and problems do occur. There are only a limited amount of care providers available, and the carers that work for them do move from one agency to another, and they are angels. We might find that by getting rid of one care provider, the same carer visits our resident through another provider, so getting rid of the contract and moving to another is a blunt way of dealing with the issues that have arisen. Our responsibility as a council is to intervene and support providers using the established London-wide providers' concerns process. We do this alongside colleagues at the CQC and the NHS with the aim of safeguarding residents at all times, and it is the responsible response to support the market as much as we can. Now, in this particular situation, we work with the provider to develop a plan to improve the service. We worked with My Home Care on an improvement plan for 6 months, long in advance of the CQC report. We had already picked up the developing issues and knew all about them, and we took immediate steps to improve it. Our safeguarding board is in a place to pick up and deal with any concerns about safeguarding and safety. The inspection took place in August 2022, and unfortunately did not take into account the corrective work which the council had already put in place. We anticipate that any re-inspection now would likely note the improvements, which are significant, but of course not perfect. Focused work on quality and safety has been completed with My Home Care alongside the safeguarding service. We have no new concerns about the safety of residents. Service users with more complex needs are being reviewed by social work teams to ensure they have the right packages, and in some instances, those on complicated packages have been transferred. Having said all of this, the point of the motion is really important and does indeed demand our attention. There is a huge pressure on the care sector, and more elderly and vulnerable residents will need our support. Therefore, the Council are also designing a new approach to home care, which will launch later this year, based on co-production with residents, providers and expertise from the sector. This will strengthen our geographical patch model, introduce block funding to provide support to the sector, giving them secure funding so they can invest in their workforce. And it will make some services available via the digital marketplace for those residents who prefer to arrange their own care directly. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Dent-Code for raising this issue tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Siren. Councillor Knight, would you like to speak?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, for the opportunity to speak on this important matter tonight.
I think we can all agree here tonight that there is a rising demand...
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Yes.
Raise it. Thank you.
Sorry. I'll try again. I think we can all agree here tonight that there is a rising demand for adult social care, and therefore a need more than ever for us to commit to a thorough and detailed redesign of home care services for our elderly and disabled residents, for whom we owe a duty of care. RBKC has a good track record for providing care to older and vulnerable residents, with our care homes all being rated as good or outstanding at present, and we aim for our home care providers to be just the same. However, unfortunately, problems do occur, particularly in the fragile home care market, and in those instances, it is our responsibility to intervene and support providers, as no resident of ours should feel unsafe in the hands of their care, or be experiencing lateness and miscared visits, which are issues the recent My Home Care CQC report referenced. Labour are right to raise the issue of home care, and of course there are challenges in Kensington, as there are across the capital and the whole country. However, it is a great shame Labour councillors call for a review, when in fact a review has already taken place, and the council has been working with My Home Care on an improvement process for 6 months, long in advance of the CQC report, and it had already been reviewed. The process of target setting for this service and put in place an action plan to accelerate corrective work, which is now close to completion. Unfortunately, the CQC inspection that took place on August 30th, 2022, did not take into account the corrective work that the council had put in place already, but we anticipate that a re-inspection would now be likely to note these improvements, which are significant but not yet perfect. Therefore, regular on-site visits are being scheduled by the council to ensure these improvements and requirements continue to be met. I believe this is the right approach, and I trust this. If the CQC had found the service to be catastrophic, they would have shut it down altogether. Earlier this year, the CQC wrote to all boroughs asking if there are any providers that could be put forward for an accelerated re-inspection. And as My Home Care have been working through their improvement process, they have asked to be considered, which has been agreed. Whilst there are still aspects they must improve on, we hope with the progress they have made, they will successfully move to the quality of good, that whatever the outcome is on the re-inspection, the council will continue with their own local improvement work with them nonetheless to ensure they go from strength to strength. With all these matters considered, I therefore support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. I will now open the motion up to debate. Councillor Rossi, you've indicated you'd like to speak.
Yes, thank you. I would like to speak to the amendment to highlight how important I think the care sector is. I speak as someone who for many years was an unpaid carer, and of course this happens a lot, that families often undertake caring duties, and many of them are in fact children looking after disabled adults. So when we as a council supply packages of care, we are not just helping the individual concerned, but their families as well. It is a hard job being a carer. It requires patience and commitment. It is not well paid and the hours are long. But we are all indebted to those that go into the care sector. And in time, we will probably all require their services. Of course, there comes a time when what a family can provide is not enough, and so then we have to turn to the care sector. I do not have personal experience of the care provided by this council, but I do have experience of continuing care provided by the NHS for people with complex medical needs, and also of a private provider. And I think a lot of the problems that have been raised in the motion and speeches actually cut across the whole care sector and not specific to one company. I'll give you 2 examples. With continuing care, I had to complain about a carer who did not have basic knowledge of hygiene. I was told that all our carers are trained. When I asked how long for, I was told 1 day. Well, that says it all. And the private company, CQC rated as outstanding, provided us with an alcoholic who was then drunk in charge of a 92-year-old with dementia. The Francis inquiry found inconsistencies in the training of staff at a Staffordshire hospital. Camilla Cavendish was then asked to review the inquiry and to make recommendations. From this review came the care certificate in 2015. That is a certificate that carers can earn. And this encompasses 15 different care standards, but unfortunately, this was not made mandatory. In my experience, the standard of carers is intensely variable. There are, of course, some wonderful carers who are highly trained, intelligent, diligent, and caring. But there are others who aren't really up to the mark. And so more training, there should be a basic minimum standard to which carers attain before they are allowed to look after people. So more training for carers is required, and a better assessment for suitability for the job is also needed. Carers ought to care. The job of a carer needs to be professionalised and to be given more respect, because, as everyone has said, they are looking after the most vulnerable people in a society. I do, however, agree that, in my experience, care companies are not particularly well run, and that they do take most of the profit rather than passing it on to their workforce. But I think that training, a mandatory training for carers, would go a long way to professionalising it as a career. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rossi. I now call on Councillor Wade.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more with Councillor Rossi. I think she spoke exceptionally well on the subject and took forward a matter that actually Councillor Healy also spoke eloquently about in her time. In a borough with an ageing population, the issue of care provision that is fit for purpose at different stages of life and need have never been more important. Out of 10 care homes registered with the CQC in the borough, some require improvement, and at one stage, one required overall improvement. So the issue of management and poor care levels of care are borough-wide and not restricted to North Kensington. But importantly, we have 29 sheltered homes in the borough, some of which were built in the 1880s, and attitudes to aging have changed, and our accommodation offer has not kept up. Also, this touches on the conditions people are living in, and we're nominating as a council to this accommodation. And the management is, rather like Councillor Rossi mentioned, rather uneven. So while the motion points out a particular business requires scrutiny, I would ask that this sector in general requires additional scrutiny. We have a duty of care to our residents. In a working party chaired by the late Christopher Buckmaster, one of the positions he put forward was the introduction of a step-down level of accommodation that would enable patients to leave hospital, adjust to a more domestic setting, promote mobility, reducing the possibility of becoming institutionalized while too long in hospital, while adaptations undertaken in the home environment. Therapy and medication routines would be therefore perfected as a measure to prevent hospital bed blocking. This would also help with actually enabling the staff and everybody else within the places they're going, whether they're going home, that they would get the right care package in place, or if they're going back to one of the homes, sheltered accommodation. The assessment periods are now taking too long, and some of the homes that residents are placed in are causing concern with their management methods and care, and our residents deserve better. Therefore, this issue requires a broader scope and calls upon the lead member for adult social care to ensure that there's an urgent review it is undertaken into the management of these homes, and the lead member for planning, in recognition of the future need, required developers to provide suitable bespoke independent accommodation on site in the Kensal and Earls Court sites so that good quality care and independent living can be distributed across the borough, homes that can be designed to accommodate resident changing needs and retain their essential networks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. I now call on Councillor Schmetterling. Up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The Labour group have put forward a motion on an extremely worthy subject, but yet again our group cannot support it as is. On this occasion, the motion even does not take into account that an action it calls for, the target setting process, has already been reviewed and an action plan put in place. I'm beginning to think I should start a count of how many times this happens versus the number of times we support a Labour motion unamended. However, I do hope the Labour group recognises that our amendment makes sense, and even if it does not vote for it, will vote for the motion as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory. Councillor Dory. I now invite Councillor Addenbrooke as the lead member to respond to the debate for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I would like to thank my colleagues, Councillor Siren, the former lead member for Adult Social Care, and Councillor Knight, the chair of the Select Committee, for their amendment to the motion and their comments tonight, as they are both acutely aware of the challenges facing this market. In February last year, a paper was brought to the Adult Social Care Select Committee regarding the recommissioning of home care services and market management, which, Councillor Denkode, some of your former colleagues thought was so good they wanted to bring it to the full council, and we've had no comments from any members of your party on this paper. As Councillor Knight said, if the CQC had found the service to be catastrophic, they would have had no choice but to shut it down. Whilst the overall rating requires improvement, they were rated good for effective, caring and responsive. Being a care worker is not an easy job. Sometimes they arrive and the resident refuses to let them in. Sometimes they've removed the key from the key safe. It's not an easy job. I also don't recognise Councillor Wade's comments re care homes. All the care homes in the borough are rated good or outstanding. The last few years have been increasingly difficult for this already fragile market, so the council has worked with local home care providers and Skills for Care so that commissioned and spot purchase contracts. Could you stop making comments? All care workers complete the care certificate, which is an identified set of standards to which all health and care professionals adhere to. And I agree with Councillor Rossi that more training needs to be done. We are also working with the Council's economic development team to provide a recruitment pipeline for local people into training and jobs. I would also like to add that all our providers are London living wage employers, and this is checked by the contract monitoring officers. This council also pays more to care workers than most other councils. So, Madam Deputy Mayor, the future. Commissioning has been working with residents, care agencies, national experts and other councils to redesign our home care offer, and we hope to go out to tender in September. The new offer will put residents in need of care at the heart of this new offer and will give them more choice. We will be increasing the number of providers per patch, and only providers which are rated good or outstanding will be considered. There will be a focus on minimum block contracts to provide secure funding and thereby more workforce sustainability. This shift will support a move to a more sustainable career-based workforce. Increasing direct payments to grow the market for personal assistance and other community services, digital care coordination will allow residents to access personal assistance via direct payments, giving them more choice. There is a whole digital social care programme in place covering assistive technology, online accounts for those who want them, plus training and development for staff. Residents and staff have held a number of sessions, including one dedicated to learning disabilities. These sessions have resulted in several pilots, and this work is ongoing. A digital wallet for residents and their families to trial, enabling them to manage their direct payments online. Another important area is around training and development of staff. The Digital Leadership Squad meets every fortnight to review progress in this field. Some residents are intrigued by the digital tools and are willing to give them a go, and others simply are not. So it's really important that our social work staff are up to speed on the opportunities and offers, whether digital or non-digital. And Councillor Thaxter, you did raise to me a concern about a care provider, but you kept talking about CHC, and I kept saying to you that is continuing healthcare and that is the NHS. I asked you to check and to come back, and you never came back. So I just want that, I want that point, it's very clear. Madam Deputy Mayor, a lot of work has gone into the redesign of our care offer, and I look forward to bringing this back to scrutiny later this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I now invite Councillor Siren to respond to the debate. Sorry?
Councillor Adam has a hand up.
Muna Adam wants to speak, Madam Deputy Mayor.
She's not her turn yet. Well, she can speak, because even though she doesn't know in advance, she's telling you tonight. But she really did that before.
Yeah, she was supposed to do it before. Yeah. Okay, you should have raised your hand before, but because we have now gone on to the lead member. However, as a concession, I will let one of you speak. No? Councillor Adam?
Councillor Adam, thank you. When I saw this motion, I'm going to just give my experience. As an unpaid carer for my parents, my dad passed away last year. He got NHS caring, and my mom was last stage of dementia, getting social service direct payment. What I would like to raise here is not a debate, is not conflict or attack, facts. What our carers suffering from. Up to date, my mom's carers getting £9 by hour, provided by social care. And I contact them to raise it when the company that get the pay through, they didn't allow the money to go out for the carers, and they're asking and demanding for £10 to 20. And up to this moment, I haven't received an answer from the other social care. Our carers that I use for my mom, lack of training, lack of even the time, wasting time traveling from place to place unpaid, and they have to work 40 hours per week to get paid 20 hours per week. Social service, lack of knowledge and information. And we'd like to advise or to recommend to the lead to go back to the social service and social workers. My mom lost or appointed 8 social workers. None of them turned to the home to see her for nearly a year. My dad, through the NHS, got a carers, hit his head, lack of training. Some of these carers, over 65, getting to come to do caring for someone need lifting. Some of the carers, they don't know how to use the hoist. Some of the carers, they don't have any training and being trained online. What we need from this council, not fighting, not laughing at each other. We need to provide correct information, and we need to look at our residents. And if you need more evidence, please come to me. I lost my job to step down to look after my mom and dad. And social service didn't have time to come to see me as an individual. I developed a minor stroke because I couldn't take a care package for mom and dad. So please stop looking at showing your face and just talking about you. Please come to talk to me. I'm really emotional about this because I lost a lot. I lost a lot. I lost my career. I lost myself. And again, we come in here and listen for something not real. Please. Sometimes my neighbors call us to help because carer couldn't come. And some patient slept on the chairs until following days. And sometimes carers, because they're old, the client fall down from the bed. And some of them really wet themselves all night because nobody there. And when you call, no answers. And when you call, receive sometimes a nasty message from our social workers. Please, please look into the social care, and because our residents need us.
Dead souls.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I now invite Councillor Siren to respond to the debate for up to 5 minutes.
Well, thank you to Councillor Adam and to Rossi for their really personal reflections, and I know how difficult it is to talk about these things, so really, I think it's really important that these personal reflections are really at the heart of our redesigned service, and I think all these voices need to be heard in what we're putting together for the review and for the new service. But I think what's really clear is that we need to focus on the care that is given by our providers, and we need mechanisms in place to make sure that we pick up issues quickly. And councillors, raise these safeguarding issues that you hear with officers, with the lead member. We are in the community and we see these things, so raise them, that's part of our role. I do think we also need to support providers to improve, and I really agree with a couple of the points mentioned about supporting carers professionally and financially. So thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Siren. I now invite Councillor Dendcode as proposer of the original motion to respond to the debate for up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And particular thanks to Councillor Adam for giving us a personal insight which has touched us all, definitely. That's really quite emotional. Thank you. Madam Mayor, it is not good enough to say that we're as bad as other boroughs, which I've been hearing. Everybody has this problem. We're supposed to be the best council. We have an ageing population, as we know, and we have more older people because, as we know, our younger people cannot afford to live here. And we'll all be dependent on these services in time because our younger people are out of the borough, and I'm talking about my own children here too. This idea that somehow we have a magic action plan with a new approach with co-design. I'm sorry, co-design is something that the council does not understand. We have a rotten track record, and tweaking this with a bit of this and a bit of that is not enough. The main issue is, which I've been hearing over and over again, is about the care market, the care market, the care market, the care providers. It's fragile, it's this, it's that, we have to support them. The issue is, care should not be a market. It's a social good. And if this council wants to be the best, they should think about community wealth building or any other kind of funding of social care. Let's actually put that to the top of our agenda. We can keep the profit that comes back into the service. We can pay people properly so that they're retained and they want to stay there. We can train them properly so they know how to change a catheter bag or use a hoist or whatever else it may be. And it will be a good profession for people, for younger people who have the energy and who really care to dedicate themselves, but be properly paid, properly trained and properly treated. This, as we've heard, should be professionalised. It breaks my heart to think that carers have to work 40 hours a week to get 20 hours pay, as we just heard from Councillor Adam. It's shocking. It's not good enough. Can we please rethink the whole way that care is looked at? It should not be a market. It's a social good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dendcode. I now put the amendment to the vote. Would those for the amendment please show? You got it. Thank you. Would those against the amendment please show? Thank you. Are there any abstentions? Thank you. I declare the amendment carried. I now put the substantive motion as amended to the vote. Would those for the substantive motion please show? Would those against the substantive motion as amended please show? Are there any abstentions? I declare the substantive motion as amended carried. I think we have to call it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Item 16, any appointments to be made here? No? I declare the meeting closed.
I'm just saying the next meeting is, but it's
Yeah.
fine, it's not.
The next meeting of the council is the annual council meetings scheduled to be held on 24 May 2023. Good evening and enjoy your supper.